Chapter 56. Large Success of the True Essence Formula's First Layer. Chapter 56. Large Success of the True Essence Formula's First Layer. Chapter title is a minor spoiler, so I've made it white. Highlight it if you want to read it now, or wait and read it at the bottom of the chapter. After he bid farewell to Lin Wu, Lin Ming returned to his residence. It felt like he was running out of time these days, as if he were in a constant race against the clock. That Lin Ming agreed to the gambling match was not on the spur of a moment. In his heart he had already roughly calculated a plan. Lin Wu had said that the likes of Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu, who were all top-tier talents, were unable to pass the 130th rank the first time they had entered the 10,000 killing array. Zhong Kang was placed 109. It seemed the disparity between them was truly enormous. Lin Ming was not arrogant. He believed that he could achieve a result that was more formidable than when Ling Sen had first entered. Therefore he calculated that he needed 1 month. Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu had reached about rank 130 when they first entered the martial house, thus, he might not even need 1 month. To complete the medicinal inscription symbol would take at least half a month. The other half would be used to slowly absorb the efficacy of the pills and consolidate his strength. The Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill and the Golden Snake Scarlet Pill were 2 precious pills that couldn't be purchased with money. In addition to the increased pill potency provided by the medicinal inscription symbol, then it would absolutely be enough for Lin Ming to break through into the 3rd stage of body transformation and even help him consolidate his cultivation. Once that happened, Lin Ming and Zhong Kang's cultivation difference would be only a single stage. If he relied on the realm of the gods' top-tier skill manual chaotic virtues combat meridians, and was still unable to cross the half-boundary to the 3rd stage and be unable to at least place in the top 100 of the ranking stone, then he would not feel any injustice at losing the gambling mat. If so, then he would have to thoroughly introspect. Thinking like this, Lin Ming started to practice his medicinal inscription symbol again. In terms of inscription skill, although he had obtained the memories of the Elder's soul fragment, he was a junior who was still very shallow in skill. It was too early to talk about any innovation. The only thing he could do was to unceasingly practice the techniques, and allow the body movements to soak into his body like a fish in water. Today, after Lin Ming practiced revolving his true essence as usual, he began to use materials to practice with. The start was doomed to failure, so he had chosen the least valuable material. Squeezing out the juice from a jade blue flower, Lin Ming concentrated and used his soul force to move the juice in midair. He took a deep breath, calmed down and let his mind relax. Let's start. A new formula. Lin Ming silently hyped himself up and began to move his right hand in a succession of dim, illusory flashes that shone with a rainbow of light. In comparison to the object inscription symbol, tracing the medicinal inscription symbol was several times more complex. Initially Lin Ming had forcefully drawn up the object inscription symbol with the true essence's strength at the 1st stage of body transformation. Back then his true essence had been stretched to the limit, but now that he had arrived with great difficulty at the 2nd stage of body transformation, his true essence had increased and had congealed and thickened. But now in the blink of an eye, he had already used more true essence that it took to draw up an object inscription symbol, and his true essence was still stretched. Luckily in this situation, Lin Ming did not feel it was too burdensome, instead he welcomingly endured it. Only by pushing oneself to the limit would they be able to progress. An hour passed by, and Lin Ming's forehead was seeped in small beads of sweat. Each rune that had to be drawn was much difficult than the object inscription rune by several times. He clenched his teeth and persisted through the hardship. Even with the true primal chaos formula supporting him, Lin Ming could not withstand such consumption of true essence and was approaching his limit, yet he hadn't even completed half of the lower spirit cure symbol. Lin Ming had already encountered this type of situation when he was trying to create the object inscription symbol. It was unrealistic to attempt to increase the amount of true essence in his body in such a short period of time. The only possible way was to reduce the rate of failure, increase his skill at the techniques, and save as much true essence as he could. He could not support it any longer. Peng! There was the sound of an explosion, and the numerous inscription symbols in front of Lin Ming loudly detonated like brilliant fireworks. After these fireworks finished flashing, a deep darkness followed. Millimeter. It's evening. Lin Ming let out a breath and sat up on his bed. The room was very quiet and peaceful, and Lin Ming could hear the sound of his breathing and heartbeat. He was too tired. Lin Ming sprawled backwards on his bed, too lazy to even move his fingers. The past few months he had practiced inscription techniques, he had constantly taxed his soul force to the limit, yet he had never felt as drained as he did now. He didn't even have the strength to revolve the true primal chaos formula within him. If his true essence was like water in a lake, then this medicinal inscription symbol was a terribly hot and dry desert, where even the last drop of his true essence was sucked clean. I want to sleep. Although if he practiced at this time he would have good results, his soul force and true essence consumption was too serious, and it brought a weary tired feeling that made him unable to focus his spirit. Millimeter? Right. The true essence stones. He had unexpectedly forgotten about them. With these, if he used these true essence stones to supplement his true essence, would it not be perfect? Lin Ming struggled to sit up. He had obtained 10 true essence stones when he had attended lecture. He grabbed one from his bag and began to greedily absorb the pure true essence within. Rich true essence continuously flowed in a steady stream through the pores in his hand. Because Lin Ming had not yet achieved the pulse condensation period, the tendons of his entire body were blocking his acupuncture points and meridians, and the true essence could only enter along his pores and slowly flow from there. If comparing the flow of true essence within him, then it was like a muddy swamp. The meridians of the body where energy circulated were just too spacious, it simply was incomparable. That was why a martial artist's breakthrough into the pulse condensation period was such a significant leap. Along with the true essence endlessly merging into his body, Lin Ming's body was like a dry basin that was being poured into by a bubbling spring. It was an indescribably refreshing and comfortable feeling, and his fatigue completely disappeared. Lin Ming began to revolve the true primal chaos formula and guide the flow of true essence slowly into his body. Although the true primal chaos formula was a top-tier quality true essence method, in this situation, the meridians had not yet opened, so the circulation speed of true essence was limited. As the true essence revolved again and again, it began to accumulate. The circulation in his body began to rapidly quicken. Like this, half an hour passed. Lin Ming's circulation speed of true essence within his body began to accelerate, until it finally passed the top speed in the past. How could this be? Lin Ming was surprised, and he continued to revolve the true primal chaos formula, and the circulation speed continued accelerating. At the moment, with a small sound, the true essence stone Lin Ming's hand cracked open. Millimeter? The true essence stone was used up already? Lin Ming was not stingy. He placed down the broken stone and grabbed another true essence stone, and continued to revolve the true primal chaos formula. The massive influx of fresh, pure true essence merged into his body. Lin Ming's true essence circulation speed climbed up even more than before, and the acceleration showed no signs of slowing down. Half a month ago, if Lin Ming's true primal chaos formula true essence revolution speed was like a baby toddler crawling around, then at present, his true essence's speed was like a teenager running at full blast. This was the large success of the first layer of the true primal chaos formula. Lin Ming took a deep breath, and his face revealed an expression wild with joy and ecstasy. He had obsessed over the first layer of the true primal chaos formula for 3 months, and had finally broken through. Lin Ming immediately shoved open his door and launched himself outside. He rushed towards the 7 Profound Martial House's strength measuring room. When he had received the jade slip during school admission, it had recorded an introduction about the strength measuring room. Any 7 Profound Martial House disciple could use it, the stone tablets inside, to measure their strength. After he had reached large success of the first layer of the true primal chaos formula, Lin Ming was itching to find out how much stronger he had become. Chapter 56. Large success of the true essence formula's first layer. Chapter 57. Ranking War. Chapter 57. Ranking War. It was already late into the night. The disciples of the martial house were either cultivating in their own rooms or had gone to sleep. There were only a few stragglers still on the streets. Lin Ming walked as if he was half flying and quickly arrived at the strength measuring room. There was no one at the strength measuring room, only an old man who guarded the door with a small flickering lamp near him. He lay exhausted on a flimsy chair, looking a little drowsy. Lin Ming greeted him, then moved past him into the room. Inside were a row of stone pillars that were used to measure strength. They were all completely unoccupied. A normal person wouldn't idle around here so late at night to test their own strength. Lin Ming randomly chose a stone pillar and firmly stood in front of it. He shut his eyes, relaxed his body, and let the true primal chaos formula revolve to the extreme. Lin Ming suddenly punched, and his first looked like a shooting star as it fell on the stone pillar. Peng! The stone pillar wildly shook, and even the ground under Lin Ming's feet trembled a little. The light beam did not stop as it leapt up several times, 2,700, 2,800, 2,900, 3,000. 3,200. 3,200 jins. Lin Ming breathed with shining eyes. 500 jins of strength. The true primal chaos formula, from the small success to large success, had increased his strength by 500 jins. To an ordinary martial artist, 500 jins was often the gap between stages, but the true primal chaos formula was in truth only the part of the chaotic virtues combat meridians which revolved true essence. It was not everything. The chaotic virtues combat meridians was truly worthy of being the realm of the god's top-tier body transformation skill manual. He remembered that of those in the sects that practiced the chaotic virtues combat meridians body transformation, there were disciple janitors who swept the floor of the entrance and little children that played near the fireplaces who had several 10,000 jins of strength. If they had reached the large success stage of the chaotic virtues combat meridians, they could even rely on their strength to shatter mountain ranges, part the seas, and shatter the skies. Reaching large success of the true primal chaos formula's first layer was only his first step. There were also 6 more layers, each more difficult than the last. Beyond the chaotic virtues combat meridians and continuing the true primal chaos formula, there was still the 8 gates of hidden celestial stems and the palace of 9 stars. At this point, I'm not even qualified to be a floor-sweeping disciple of these ancient sects. Realizing this, Lin Ming's excitement dissipated by a bit. The road that he wanted to walk on was truly long. That night, because Lin Ming had just broken through the skill manual, his true essence was smooth and he was not sleepy, so he continued his cultivation. After Lin Ming consolidated the boundary of the true primal chaos formula, he spent the rest of the time practicing his inscription technique. Because of the large success of the first layer of the true primal chaos formula, Lin Ming's efficiency of drawing the medicinal inscription was greatly enhanced, and he was able to persist until about 80% of the entire plan. If he was able to continue like this, then with another 7 or 8 days, Lin Ming would be able to complete the lower spirit cure symbol. The crazy cultivation caused many true essence stones to be consumed. Just that night, Lin Ming had already used up 3 true essence stones. Although he had agreed with Zhong Kang to use 10 true essence stones as the gambling stake, from the start Lin Ming had never thought he would lose, so there was no way that he would be afraid of using them. As he looked at the 3 split stones that had long since lost their true essence luster, Lin Ming touched his nose. This usage was just too fast, but a month later, someone would be kind enough to give him 20 more. If he knew earlier that he would use these true essences stones so quickly, he would have thought a month was too long. Half a month would have been just about right. Lin Ming greedily smacked his lips. If these thoughts were known by Zhong Kang, there was no way of telling what Zhong Kang would make of it. It was the morning of the second day and Lin Ming woke up early to attend lecture as usual. He listened to the elder speak on the fundamentals. But today he also met an old acquaintance, one who he hadn't wanted to meet in person, Lan Yunyu. Within the martial house, there were altogether 600 to 700 disciples. Meeting her sooner or later was normal. Lin Ming didn't pay any attention to this as he listened to the elder talk about today's weapon of discussion, the spear, its skills, and its usage. Lin Ming listened with rapt attention. At the end of the lecture, after the elder had left, Lin Ming was still immersed in his thoughts. The elder had given him many inspirations. As he finally snapped back from his trance, the rest of the disciples had already left the martial lecture hall, except Lan Yunyu. She sat in the same seat like she was lost in thought. Lin Ming began packing up his things and readying to leave, but at this time Lan Yunyu suddenly whispered, Lin Ming, can you wait for a second? Lin Ming's hand movements slowed. He asked, can I help you? Although the tone was polite, there was a hint of the taste of alienation within Lin Ming's words, causing Lan Yunyu to lightly sigh. She said, congratulations on attaining the first-place candidate spot. Thanks. After Lan Yunyu finished speaking, there was a long silence, and the atmosphere between the two began to grow a bit awkward. I heard that in 1 month you will have a fighting match with Zhong Kang? Lin Ming's eyes twitched. He said, the news spread that fast. Well, yes, I really did make a bet with Zhong Kang. News of the new first-place disciple and the old disciple gambling was sure to spread like wildfire. In addition, Zhong Kang and Liu Mingxiang had deliberately publicized it as much as possible. Lan Yunyu bit her lip, hesitated, then quietly whispered, Zhong Kang is Zhu Yang's former comrade. Lin Ming was shocked. Lan Yunyu was more sensitive and thoughtful about these matters than he had thought. She had already correctly guessed that this matter was driven by Zhu Yang. I know. Lin Ming faintly responded. Then Lan Yangyu hadn't known how she should open her mouth to say it, but today she had wanted to urge Lin Ming not to take on the gambling match. The words were floating at the tip of her tongue, but yet she feared that Lin Ming would turn a deaf ear to her pleas. I know that you aren't willing to listen to me, but I have already been in the 7 Profound Martial House for half a year, and have seen many of the gambling matches between the new and old disciples. The new disciples almost never win against the old disciples. Although you are the new first-place candidate, Zhong Kang is also known as a fierce character within the Earth Hall. And because of Zhu Yang, his hand will be cruel. Lin Ming smiled. You said that I may not be willing to listen. Do you mean that you do not want me to go to the fighting match? Since I already agreed on the bet, it is impossible for me to now keep this appointment, otherwise I would have already ran away before the battle had begun, and this would go against my martial path. But, all right, Lan Yunyu sighed. She knew that once Lin Ming had made up his mind, it would be very difficult to change. Thank you for your advice. I'll go first. Lin Ming said as he picked up his things and left the martial lecture hall. Leaving Lan Yunyu alone, she silently kept sitting in her seat. At the moment she could not identify the taste in her heart. It was impossible to change Zhu Yang's mind, and it was also impossible to change Lin Ming's mind. They would one day fight, but to Lan Yunyu, regardless of Lin Ming's strength of background, it was all inferior to Zhu Yang. The battle would happen, and there would only be a suffering party. Time passed like running water, and it was already the 4th day since Lin Ming had arrived at the 7 Profound Martial House. That morning, Lin Ming had been sent a gathering notice, and he arrived early at the Martial House's martial stage. The new disciples of the Earth Hall had all assembled together. After they had all arrived, a red-haired man carrying a fencing saber showed up at the contest field. This was Lin Ming's first-class Earth Hall instructor, Hong Shi. Hong Shi gave a feeling of a swift, brave, and fiercely overwhelming power. If he was in the army, he would have been an absolute general that bravely killed all enemies, trained his troops strictly, and followed like military's laws like a mountain. After Hong Shi arrived at the contest field, he glanced at the crowd, and with a steady and powerful voice, said, "Today is the ranking war. Everybody, come with me." Ranking war? They had already known that once they entered the 7 Profound Martial House, sooner or later they would have to participate in the 10,000 killing array ranking war. It had finally begun. Of the 20 new disciples of the Earth Hall, which one wasn't a genius of their generation? They had been looking forward to this for a long time. This was their chance to prove themselves. They all thought to attack the ranks of the ranking stone and attain more resources. These geniuses weren't willing to accept an inferior status under others. These people, all of them were youthful kids full of smug ambition. They had been toiling their days away, waiting for this ranking war to amaze the world with a single, brilliant feat. Heh, it's finally the time of the ranking war. I'm glad I showed up. A youth carrying a long knife said. His chest had scars half a foot long and he was cracking his knuckles together, making pop-pop noises. Chapter 58 The 10,000 Killing Array. Chapter 58 The 10,000 Killing Array. The youth had a long scar from an old knife wound on his face. His name was Wang Mang and he was 18 years old. He had joined the Sky Fortune Kingdom's army as a mercenary when he was 15, and had been sent to the frontier where he killed many people. On the border, he had been stabbed, and at the border, every day for 3 years he had lived on the edge of death, until he had finally reached the 3rd stage of body transformation. He had rich combat experience and his strength was high. During the entrance examination, his fist strength at the strength trial had reached 2,500 jins, and he had also reached the 3rd floor of the exquisite pagoda. These juniors who got the top 3 spots really think they can surpass us with their strength. If it wasn't for the exquisite pagoda deciding an opponent's strength based on their skeletal age, I would have reached the 5th floor, said a youth at Wang Mang's side. His name was Li Tai, and he was Wang Mang's ally. He had also tested his fist strength at 2,500 jins and had reached the 3rd floor of the exquisite pagoda. Fist strength was not a domain in which mercenaries excelled. Fist strength mainly depended on one's own talent and cultivation based on the skill manual they followed. These mercenaries' skill manuals were very ordinary, and their strength could only be so strong. Their formidable aspects lay in their rich combat experience, skillful blade techniques, and sharp fighting instinct to surprise an enemy and kill them. Therefore the dreadful nature of these 2 youths lay in actual combat, in particular life and death situations, and not tests. Wang Yangfeng, Lin Ming. These 2 kids are just little flowers that grew up in a greenhouse. Our fighting ability was learnt at the end of a knife's blade while fighting for our lives. How could they even be our match? In the exquisite pagoda, they were restricted by their skeletal age and were stopped at the 3rd floor. But the ranking war did not have this limit, and all participants were treated impartially. This was their turn to shine. The 10,000 killing array that the 7 profound martial house used for the ranking war was in a mountain valley not too far from the exquisite pagoda. The mountain valley was covered in sharp bamboo, and the thick, angry bamboo leaves gave off a chilly, withering aura. In the center of these layers upon layers of bamboo was a clearing, in which there was an ashlar square 1,000 steps wide. At the center of the square was a 10 by 10 foot wide altar. The altar was engraved with a variety of luminescent runes and symbols. This altar was the 10,000 killing array which was used in the ranking war. By the time Lin Ming's group had arrived at the ashlar square, there were already many people gathered there. Because the 10,000 killing array consumed a colossal number of true essence stones every time it was activated, it would only be opened once a month at an appointed time. At that time, all the martial artists of the 7 profound martial house could voluntarily participate in the ranking war, but they also needed to pay a fee of 1 true essence stone as collateral. If their ranking was lower than 100 and they rose 5 spots, or if their ranking was higher than 100 and they rose 3 spots, they would be given back their true essence stone. Otherwise, the 7 profound martial house would keep it. This sort of stipulation was so that disciples who hadn't made any significant progress would not hold the viewpoint that they should come regardless of whether they advanced or not. It would just cause too many disciples to want to be tested, and there wasn't enough time in a day to do that. Hongxi said, "New disciples who are participating for the first time in the ranking war do not need to pay a fee of a true essence stone. You only need to use the jade slip that you were issued to participate in the 10,000 killing array assessment. In the 10,000 killing array, your true body will not be injured. Once you die in the illusion, the assessment will end and your final ranking will be based upon the score you achieve from killing your enemies." Hongxi said this and then dismissed the troop. Lin Ming entered the ashlar square, as he wanted to take a look at this 10,000 killing array altar. At the same time, he discovered 2 people he knew. These 2 people were Liu Mingxiang and Zhong Kang, who had come to provoke him just a few days ago. Meanwhile, Zhong Kang also discovered Lin Ming. He looked at him with a hint of disdain in his smile. "Lin Ming, I had forgotten, but it seems that the 10,000 killing array assessment also allows new disciples to participate. Hehe, I am highly anticipating your performance. I hope you can enter in the top 180, otherwise it's just too boring. You don't need to worry about my ranking." "How come Zhu Yang didn't come?" Lin Ming pointed this out, as he knew that the last time Zhong Kang had provoked him was because Zhu Yang was pulling the strings behind the scenes. However, Zhong Kang did not mind, he just didn't care how Lin Ming came to know about this matter. Zhong Kang sneered and said, "Zhu Yang is a disciple of the heavenly abode and his ranking is 39. With that ranking, every rank above it is difficult. How could he come every month? Do you even understand about these boundaries? Lin Ming replied, I'm not interested in you or your crap. After the month ends, we will come to a resolution. At the appointed time, I hope you can still smile afterwards. Haha, that was exactly what I was going to say to you. News of the gambling match between Zhong Kang and Lin Ming had been spread around, and many people knew about it. Some people took pleasure in others' misfortune and wanted to watch the new first-place disciple suffer a humiliating loss, but there were also some people who loathed Zhong Kang's actions. Zhong Kang was bullying a new disciple after all, and the despicable action of trying to take his new true essence stones was despised by them. At this time, Wang Yangfeng bumped into Liu Mingxiang. With Liu Mingxiang's arrogant nature and Wang Yanfeng's proud character, this naturally spelled disaster. By now, the Ashlar Square's altar suddenly shot out an abundance of light rays, and each rune and symbol on the altar began to blaze into existence one after the other. The ranking war had started. In the 10,000 killing array's altar were 12 positions. 12 people could participate in the assessment at the same time. After the assessment, the 10,000 killing array would directly reflect the combined killing score onto the ranking magic array to get the final ranking. Lin Mingxiang saw the 10,000 killing array revolve and light up and laughed. Wang Yangfeng, there is no need to say anything puerile. Why don't we try our hand in the 10,000 killing array and see exactly who is inferior? That's just right for me. Although Wang Yangfeng had received a setback by Lin Ming, his spirit hadn't dropped. Although he knew that it wasn't possible to win against Liu Mingxiang, he still dared to challenge him. The newborn calf does not fear the tiger. This Wang Yangfeng has some guts. What use are guts? His age is too small, there is no way for him to win. New disciples that could enter past 180 are already rare. 150 is a peerless talent, and 130 could even be said to be a miracle of heaven that is rarely seen even every decade. Ling Sen and Ta Ku were unable to. This Liu Mingxiang is rank 125, and he might even advance this time. What chance does Wang Yangfeng possibly have to win? Lin Ming listened to others' comments. His eyes turned to the ranking stone and sure enough, Liu Mingxiang was rank 125. He was within the upper middle rankings of the Earth Hall. In the entirety of the Earth Hall and the Heavenly Abode were 230 disciples. It was a very good result if a new disciple could reach at least rank 200. Wang Yangfeng could easily accomplish this, but he wanted to reach a much higher and loftier goal, and Lin Ming was the same. These recent days, he had learnt about these approximate ranking stone requirements. If he wanted to rank above 180, he would need at least 100 points. If he wanted to rank above 150, he needed several hundred points. And killing someone that was equal to the peak of the third stage of body transformation only gave 50 points. 12 disciples stepped onto the altar and firmly stood there. The deacon who was responsible for activating and maintaining the array said, "There is no limit to the assessment duration. If you defeat an enemy at the second stage of body transformation, you will gain 1 point. If you defeat an enemy at the peak of the second stage of body transformation, you will gain 5 points. A third stage body transformation opponent will give you 10 points, and the peak of the third stage of body transformation will give you 50 points. A fourth stage body transformation opponent will give you 100 points, and a peak fourth stage body transformation opponent will give you 500 points. A fifth stage body transformation opponent will give you 1000 points, and a peak fifth stage body transformation opponent will give you 5000 points. The highest level combatant you will face is at the pulse condensation stage. If you defeat one, you will gain 10,000 points. After entering the magic array, you may use your thoughts to select a weapon to wield. Death results in failure and ejection from the array. Now start. After the deacon's voice faded, the altar flashed with a bright light. The 12 disciples inside the altar blurred a little as if they were covered by some invisible force. In the altar, Wang Yong opened his eyes and arrived in a lifeless white world. In front of him was every weapon imaginable: heavy swords, soft swords, long swords, broadswords, short swords, katanas, spears, axes, hammers, and so forth. "Come to me, long sword." As soon as Wang Yangfeng thought this, a long sword appeared in his hand. In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, 90% of martial artists used a sword, and among those, 80% of them used a long sword. A long sword was a fantastic weapon. It was dynamic and relentless, swift and fierce. The test finally started, and 7 or 8 vicious beasts appeared in front of Wang Yangfeng. There were also 3 or 4 martial artists whose strength ranged from the early 2nd stage of body transformation to the early 3rd stage of body transformation. Wang Yangfeng coldly gazed at them. He had to defeat these opponents. When the real fight began, Wang Yangfeng found that the assessment was actually very simple. Every time he killed an enemy, a new one would immediately appear to replace it, except that this new opponent's strength was more formidable. Wang Yangfeng had only killed 5 or 6, when martial artists at the 4th stage of body transformation began to appear. When he accumulated 110 points, Wang Yangfeng gave a stuffy humph as he received a minor wound. When he gathered up to 180 points, a martial artist managed to pierce a sword into Wang Yanfeng's stomach. In that final moment, Wang Yangfeng sliced off that martial artist's head, and at the same time he was stabbed through the heart. Final score, 190 points. After dying, Wang Yangfeng was shot out of the 10,000 killing array. He looked pale, but luckily he had managed not to faint because of his previous experience at the exquisite pagoda. Wang Yangfeng had adapted to this sort of illusory killing realm, and although his entire body was racked with aching pain, he hadn't truly been injured. These aches were only because of the phantom nerve stimulations from being killed. As Wang Yangfeng looked around the altar, his complexion sank. He was unexpectedly the first one to be eliminated. Besides him, all 11 other people were still on the altar. Chapter 59: The Gap Between the New and the Old. Chapter 59: The Gap Between the New and the Old. As Wang Yangfeng looked around the altar, his complexion sank. He was unexpectedly the first one to be eliminated. Beside him, all other 11 people were still on the altar. How? I was the worst. Don't be discouraged. An indifferently cold voice sounded from nearby Wang Yanfeng's ear. Wang Yangfeng turned around and looked. The one speaking was the Earth Hall instructor, Hong Shi. The 11 on the altar are some of the Earth Hall's most outstanding disciples. Your ranking is not too bad, Hong Shi said as he referred to the ranking stone to his side. Wang Yanfeng's name was now impressively arranged at rank 168. This result was far off from the top-tier talents of rank 150 and above, but it shouldn't be forgotten that Wang Yangfeng was only 15 years old. If he studied for 6 years in the 7 profound martial house, it was already a settled matter that he would enter the heavenly abode. Even making the top 10 on the ranking stone was not impossible in 5 or 6 years. Although Hong Shi said his ranking wasn't terrible, Wang Yangfeng was discontent and dissatisfied with this result. Liu Mingxiang was at rank 125. The disparity was just too big. He was unable to restrain himself from glancing at Lin Ming. He saw that he seemed indifferent, and was otherwise very calm. This fellow is stronger than me, but it's not a ridiculous strength. If I was rank 168, then he could probably rank at 150. Zhong Kang, who he has a match with, is rank 109, and might even be higher this time. Isn't he worried? At this time, several more people were shot out by the 10,000 killing array. Their rankings varied from 120 to 150. Then after a while, a few more people were ejected, Liu Mingxiang impressively among them. His final result was a remarkable rank 122, but he was not able to jump up by 5 ranks. Liu Mingxiang reached into his clothes and brought out a pill which he took. He recovered a bit, and smiled as he looked to Wang Yangfeng. This result was more or less what he expected. Wang Yanfeng's face was ugly. He finally understood the gap between a new disciple and an old disciple. The 7 profound martial house was a gathering place for talents and geniuses. These disciples of the Earth Hall were the geniuses among geniuses. In addition to the resources provided by the 7 profound martial house and the lectures and tutoring by famous instructors, how could they possibly not progress amazingly quickly? Liu Mingxiang had already been enrolled here for 2 years. This gap was not the least bit unusual. Wang Yangfeng clenched his fist. He knew perfectly well that in the match between him and Liu Mingxiang, he would undoubtedly be the loser. But he would still fight. Everything he lost, he would get back in the future. Rank 168. Hehe, how tender. Wang Mang taunted with a smile as he saw Wang Yanfeng's ranking. This position is about 100 or 200 points. All I have to do is kill 4 guys at the peak of the 3rd stage of body transformation and I'll reach it. This father once killed 6 martial artists on the frontier who had the same cultivation. This time I will absolutely advance to rank 150. Le Tai rubbed the tip of his nose with his thumb, full of fighting spirit. He was a martial artist whose cultivation was at the peak of the 3rd stage of body cultivation. Because of his many years as a professional mercenary who constantly flirted with death, his combat prowess was far above a similar martial artist with the same cultivation. Us brothers must get at least rank 150 before showing our faces to Lin Ming and Wang Yangfeng again. We will surpass them, otherwise we really are garbage. The second round is starting. Step up. The magic array began to revolve and activate again. Wang Mang and Le Tai took a spot next to each other, and after standing there, Wang Mang turned and said, "Hey, first place, aren't you coming up?" "You first." Lin Ming replied as he glanced at Zhong Tai and Wang Mang. These two had a very heavy murderous air around them. They had obviously killed many people in the past. Generally, such a person would not be weak. The light rays of the magic array flashed, and Wang Mang and Li Tai entered the 10,000 killing array. These two people's weapons were the broadsword. It was a weapon that could kill a large number of enemies in a gathered crowd and had overwhelming power. But these two people soon realized that the 10,000 killing array was much more difficult than they had first assumed. Although Li Tai had killed 6 martial artists who were at the peak of the viscera stage at the frontier, that had been done one at a time. Now he needed to simultaneously guard and fend off the attacks of 10 enemies who all converged on him. Let alone killing someone at the peak of viscera training, even someone at early stage of viscera training would not be easy. As for the enemies at the 2nd stage of body transformation, flesh training, he managed to fend them off and kill one, but a viscera training level opponent instantly replaced him. Even 4th stage of body transformation, altering muscle opponents began to appear. The more they killed, the more dangerous their situation became. These two martial artists at the peak of the 3rd stage could even favorably compare to a martial artist at the early altering muscle stage. But now they had to face them while being besieged by enemies on all sides, and after the time it took to burn a stick of incense, they had been defeated. Final result. Wang Mang, rank 156. Li Tai, rank 158. They had not been able to enter the top 150 ranks. When this pair was shot out by the 10,000 killing array, they looked at the results on the ranking stone and could not help but feel an agonizing sense of frustration. Their prized superior combat strength was not enough to let them reach the top 150. Moreover, they were already 18 years old and had little room for improvement. Perhaps even when they graduated from the 7 profound martial house, they would not be able to reach the top 100. Lin Ming watched as this disheartened pair departed. In his heart he already knew that to enter the top 150 in the first assessment was to be a top-tier talent. But sometimes even a top-tier talent might not always have a good result. Wang Yangfeng was considered a top-tier talent, but unfortunately it could be said that it was a pity he was too young. He looked at Zhong Kang. Zhong smiled as he looked back. This Zhong Kang is a half-step into the altering muscle stage. But if it is just a normal peak altering muscle martial artist, they might not be his match. Although I have the true primal chaos formula's large success stage, to beat him now is not possible. That Liang Taishan is going on stage. He is the 3rd place among the new disciples. Some people in the crowd recognized Liang Taishan. This fellow's robust and large physique left a very strong impression. Liang Taishan and Lin Ming both have inborn divine strength. The 3rd place in the entrance exam this time also obtained a golden snake scarlet pill. Looking at this Liang Taishan's performance, we can just jump up 20 or 30 ranks to guess Lin Ming's performance. Liang Taishan was often compared with Lin Ming because the two were similar in age and also had inborn divine strength. After Liang Taishan came on stage, he gave a gruff smile and then made long strides towards the 10,000 killing array. He had already taken the golden snake scarlet pill long ago, and now he was a half step into the viscera training stage. The breakthrough to the next stage was only a matter of time. His cultivation was not too different from Wang Yanfeng's, and his inborn divine strength definitely covered a large portion of that gap. Although Liang Tieshan's cultivation was the same with Wang Yangfeng, he still lacked the actual combat experience that Wang Yangfeng had. He also lacked Wang Yanfeng's martial skill, the 9 paths of truth, and the movement skill, the 7 despairing steps. Finally, Liang Taishan was also shot out a bit earlier than Wang Yangfeng from the 10,000 killing array. His final ranking was 176, and he had entered the top 180, which was quite rare, but could not be regarded as a top-tier talent. Liang Taishan, rank 176. Wang Yangfeng, rank 168. I wonder what rank this Lin Ming will be able to achieve. As the audience talked about, Lin Ming leapt on stage. Hey! The number 1 new disciple has come on stage. I don't know anything about this guy, but I heard he has inborn divine strength and had eaten some rare and precious materials. He might be able to advance into the top 150. Do you think it is that easy to enter the top 150 rankings? Except Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu, there haven't been any other 15-year-olds who slaughtered their way into the top 150 rankings. He took first place in the entrance exam because he is young and had an advantage rushing up the exquisite pagoda. But the 10,000 killing array is impartial to age, said a disciple with a hint of jealousy. This disciple was already 19 years old. Haha, you envy others' age for being young. The exquisite pagoda is the fairest stage. No matter your age, it only tests the degree of talent. But with this 10,000 killing array, the young martial artists truly suffer a great loss. This Lin Ming is only 15 years old, he might be able to enter the top 160 rankings. Even 170 is a top-tier talent. Achieving around 140 or 150 symbolizes a monstrous genius. Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu had all achieved around those rankings when they had their first ranking war. That time was a true convergence of talents. How could the assessment this time even compare? At the mention of Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu, several present people's expression changed. These 3 had a great amount of prestige and power which they had acquired over the years, even more so than some core disciples and the elusive Qin Xingxuan. They were almost selected to be core disciples themselves, but still enjoyed a massive amount of resources and did not need to participate in the 10,000 killing array ranking assessment. Even the lectures they attended, their practice, and their skill manuals were all beyond what an ordinary disciple could possess. Because of these reasons, to an ordinary disciple, the concept of an existence of a core disciple like Qin Xingxuan was too distant and incomprehensible. She was not like a martial house disciple at all. Therefore her accumulated prestige and fame was less than that of Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu. Chapter 60 The Tiger Enters a Flock of Sheep. Chapter 60 The Tiger Enters a Flock of Sheep. Lin Ming had outstanding oral acuity, and he could hear the comments of these people. He turned his head to look at the ranking stone. Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu were all exactly ranked in the top 3 positions. But of these 3 people, their ranking and martial talents were actually reversed. Zhong Guanyu had the highest talent. In the entirety of the 7 profound martial house's non-core disciples, he was the only 5th grade talent. Ta Ku was next. His talent was a superior 4th grade, just a bit away from a 5th grade talent, and he also had extraordinary divine inborn strength. But Ling Sen was the worst. His talent was only an inferior 4th grade. There seemed to be something out of place about it. After Lin Ming learned of Ling Sen's talent grade, he hadn't figured out how Ling Sen could rely on his inferior 4th grade talent to firmly occupy the first spot on the ranking stone. One's own total strength and ability depended on many factors. Talent was only one of them. But talent was actually the most important. Was it possible that Ling Sen also had a fortuitous encounter? Had he eaten a valuable material or something to that effect? Although Lin Ming knew that a pure heart of martial arts was a very big factor in determining strength, Lin Ming did not actually think that a heart of martial arts would have such a tremendous influence. Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu, These three people had entered the Seven Profound Martial House during the same entrance exam. It could be said to be a true convergence of talent. In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, every decade or so there would be a generation of talents that could be said to be the strongest. It could be said that Ling Ming's generation wasn't filled with top-tier talents, but once one included the monstrous peerless genius Qin Xingxuan, there wasn't much of a difference. Lin Ming stood at the altar of the 10,000 killing array and silently revolved the true primal chaos formula. After he had reached the large success stage of the true primal chaos formula, he had only measured his fist strength on the stone pillar, and how not tested how far his battle prowess had improved. This was just the right time to experiment. The 10,000 killing array shined with glimmering rays and Lin Ming's whole body was soaked in this glowing light. Under the stage, the audience's eyes were mostly on him. Zhong Kang's mouth twitched with a little thoughtful smile. He was a half step into the fourth stage of body transformation, altering muscle, and his combat prowess was enough to defeat an ordinary martial artist who was at the peak of altering muscle. This strength gave him the qualifications to despise and feel utter contempt for the cultivation of the peak of body transformation's second stage, Lin Ming. The 10,000 killing array activated, and Lin Ming arrived in the middle of a dazzlingly bright white space. In front of him were a variety of every known weapon, the long sword, the stiletto, the long knife, the short sword, it had it all. Before entering the Seven Profound Martial House, Lin Ming had used the short sword, which was most similar to the deboning knife he had always used. But after he started to practice the chaotic virtues combat meridians, his strength had increased, his true essence had thickened by several times, and the short sword no longer suited him. The chaotic virtues combat meridians tempered my body. Now my fist is my best weapon, and I haven't chosen a new weapon. Lin Ming thought, and these weapons all disappeared into mist. Meanwhile, in front of Lin Ming, there were more than 10 phantom shades that appeared. These phantom creatures included vicious beasts and martial artists. Their strength ranged from the early second stage of body transformation to the peak of the third stage of body transformation. Seeing this enemies rushing with killing intent towards him, Lin Ming hurried and revolved the true primal chaos formula to its limit. With the first layer at the large success stage, his whole body's true essence shot up, and it felt as if strength was endlessly pouring from his body. Roar! A first-level tiger-shaped vicious beast roared and rushed at him. This vicious beast's skin was coarse and its flesh was thick. Its body weight was 600 to 700 jins, and its dashing increased its impact strength by several times. As he faced this vicious beast, Lin Ming tightened his fist, and his knuckles cracked like fierce thunder. Die! Lin Ming yelled. He struck out his fist and it smashed forwards, erupting with all 3,200 jins of his strength. Bang! The center of his fist struck the tiger-like vicious beast in the forehead and its skull fractured with a crashing sound. That 600 to 700 jin vicious beast that had rushed at Lin Ming was sent soaring backwards to its doom with a single first, but Lin Ming only stepped on the ground, and after the recoil, was steady once again. The tiger-like vicious beast could not even let out a sorrowful howl as it soared through the air. Its skull was completely shattered into pieces, its brain turned into pulp, and it instantly died as it plummeted to the ground. With a single fist that struck down his enemy, Lin Ming's fighting spirit rose like a rainbow after a spring shower, and the true primal chaos formula was revolving to its maximum limit. He shot forward and crashed into the middle of his enemies. His fist was like a hurricane, every kick was a tsunami. He was like a fierce tiger that had entered a flock of sheep. His might was overwhelming. Blood readily splashed everywhere, and the sounds of bones breaking filled the air. The rough fur and thick meat of the beasts could simply not stand up to the devastating strength of Lin Ming's first. The frail phantom martial artists simply melted away with one punch. Peak Viscera Training Martial Artist. After Lin Ming killed a peak body transformation second stage martial artist with a fist, a peak Viscera Training martial artist appeared in his stead. When a martial artist reached the boundary of body transformation's third stage, Viscera Training, their internal organs would be guarded by true essence, and their defensive power would increase. Even Lin Ming would find it difficult to finish off this enemy with his fists, and not only that, but this martial artist's movements were flexible like a reed, and its attacks were swift and fierce. Wanting to hit it would not be easy. You're 50 points. When Lin Ming saw this peak viscera training martial artist, not only did he not fear, but his fighting spirit instead shot to the sky. After reaching large success in the true primal chaos formula's first layer, he needed a decent opponent to test his strength. The martial artist swung his sword out. Lin Ming lowered his body and flung himself close to the ground, letting the sword fly over his head. With a fluid reflex, he punched out at the martial artist's knee. After reaching true primal chaos formula's large success in the first layer, Lin Ming's true essence had thickened, and his speed had also risen to the heights of another level. The velocity with which this punch shot out was like a hidden dragon that emerged from the depths. The martial artist panicked and tried to avoid this strike, but Lin Ming pushed his hands against the ground and let loose a brutal leg sweep at the martial artist's back. This leg came out flying out like a whip. The martial artist wasn't able to avoid it, and coughed up a mouthful of blood as he was kicked to the side. Lin Ming relentlessly continued his attack in hot pursuit. His body sprung upwards and his fists fell like a rainstorm. The martial artist parried, but a fist managed to find a hole in his patterns and punched him. Even though his internal organs were protected by true essence, once hit by the strength of a 3,200 Jin first, he took a major wound. The martial artist vomited more blood, his sternum fractured and all his defenses were laid open. Lin Ming made one last fist and struck the center left of his chest. The martial artist's heart instantly stopped from the sheer force, and this peak viscera training martial artist was completely killed by Lin Ming. In the midst of chaos among all these enemies, he had managed to kill an opponent a full stage above him. This result was enough to make one feel proud, but Lin Ming also knew that this strength was still lacking when compared to Zhong Kang. That was another 50 points, now I have more than 200. An incense stick of time has passed and this Lin Ming is still fighting in there, and his body is still standing firmly on stage. He really has surpassed Wang Yangfeng. He has surpassed Wang Yangfeng, but don't forget, he obtained the first place reward from the entrance exam, the Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill, and also Wang Yanfeng's Golden Snake Scarlet Pill. He ate those two rare and precious medicines, yet he didn't manage to achieve the third stage of body transformation. His strength still increased, but his medium third-grade talent really despises him. When the disciples went on stage, those in the audience naturally dispensed their thoughts on them. This time Zhong Kang had crossed his arms across his chest and was looking up with a relaxed, casual demeanor and a sly smile. Lin Ming's strength was as expected, otherwise it would just be no fun. An incense stick quickly burnt down, and soon, a second incense stick also reached its end. Chapter 61 Spear. Chapter 61 Spear. 2 sticks of incense have already burnt down. Li Tai and Wang Mang's faces were ugly. They did not think that Lin Ming would been able to persist for so long. It was proof that Lin Ming had already surpassed them, that he was likely to enter the top 150 ranking. Big brother, this Lin Ming is still fighting in there. Li Tai's mouth twitched. He never thought that they two brothers' talents were inferior to others, but they couldn't even keep up in actual combat. This all made Li Tai feel depressed. Millimeter, we underestimated the 7 profound martial house's youthful talents. When this Lin Ming fought with Wang Yangfeng, he must have hidden his true skills, either that or his progression has been amazingly quick. At that time, a ray of light shot out as the first person was ejected from the 10,000 killing array. This person was not Lin Ming, but an old disciple of the Earth Hall. His final result was 147. 147. My goodness, this Lin Ming is relying on his age of 15 to advance past the 150 top ranking. This is the same result that Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu had achieved. Saying that Lin Ming was on par with these 3 existences, many present people's hearts turned cold. These 3 men had always been the unshakable and ineffable existences that occupied the top 3 ranks of the ranking stone. Their strength was a level higher than those of the 4th and 5th rank. And to say that Lin Ming shared this honor with these 3 people? It didn't matter if he had managed to scrounge around and eat some rare material, or if he had met some sort of fortuitous encounter as a child, as long as he managed to be on par with these 3, his future fame would echo in the world. Don't draw conclusions so quickly. It's only time that's passed. Maybe this Lin Ming is very slow at killing, and is just spending most of his time running away. If that's the case, then he wouldn't have 200 points yet. Millimeter, that's reasonable. Being in there a long time doesn't mean his score is also high. That old disciple that came out was just rank 147 and had just entered the top 150. Let's wait and see. In the illusory world of the 10,000 killing array, even if one fended off enemies and did not kill them, their number would still slowly increase. So even if a person was strong, they could not stay inside for an indefinite period of time. Of course, if their power exceeded that of a Xiantian expert, they could directly break through the barriers, but that was a different matter altogether. Lin Ming hadn't done any useless dodging. From the moment he started with that first kill to now, he hadn't stopped to take a single breath of rest. The only thought on his mind was to kill, kill, kill. The Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridians was a body transformation skill manual that was the extreme essence of light and yang. Its every style and move was to march forward and defy all enemies with courage. It wasn't a skill manual that favored dirty dogfights. Lin Ming's fists were already dripping wet with blood. Every time an enemy died, a more formidable one took its place. These phantom beings started at the early third stage of body transformation and became the peak of the third stage, and onto even the fourth stage of body transformation, altering muscle. There were already 3 altering muscle level enemies that had appeared, and with the viscera training level enemies serving as a distraction, even Lin Ming was finding it difficult to keep up. Fortunately, Lin Ming had support from the first layer's large success of the true primal chaos formula. Lin Ming's true essence was rich and lively, and it continued to grow. His physical strength hadn't dropped by much. Even a durable martial artist who had reached the large success stage of viscera training and could breathe like a serpent would find it hard to compare with his resilience. The enemies became stronger and stronger, and finally a body transformation second-level vicious beast appeared. It was a crystal-backed spider. Lin Ming felt an enormous pressure on him when this beast appeared. A crystal-backed spider's defensive capabilities were astonishing. It was difficult to wound it even with a sword. It could also launch its spider silk in a long-range attack. The spider's silk was durable like steel wire. Once he was entangled by this silk in the midst of all these enemies, he would immediately die. This spider is difficult to deal with. Lin Ming tightly frowned. If this was one-on-one, he could wear this spider down until it died, but in his present situation with danger on all sides, he couldn't take this tactic into consideration. At the same time he had to deal with the attacks of multiple enemies, he also had to dodge this spider's long-range attack. Lin Ming was surrounded by peril. Che! A sharp sword light flew at him. Lin Ming immediately backed up and the dangerous sword light just barely missed his chest. This sharp sword aura really made one's hair stand up. Lin Ming gradually found that his own fists were insufficient weapons. In it was against a single enemy there would be no problem, but in this midst of a chaotic crowd, he found that he lacked the ability to move as he liked. If he attacked an enemy, especially with a close-range attack, he would be vulnerable to the enemy intercepting. Maybe he should choose a weapon? If so, what should he choose? Lin Ming's mind began to race with thoughts and ideas. Sword. In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, 90% of martial artists used the sword. The reason was that sword's use was diverse and its attacks were sharp and fierce. Although it was difficult to reach the pinnacle of swordplay, the barrier to entry was not high. A sword could attack and a sword could defend, and it could be heavy or it could be light. It was a versatile weapon that had gained a top reputation with soldiers among every weapon in the world. But Lin Ming felt that the sword did not suit him. What he cultivated was the Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridians, the most young of all body transformation skill manuals. If he reached the large success stage, then his aura would be like a billowing tsunami that swept through heaven and earth. If he saw a god, then he would kill a god. If he saw a demon, then he would kill a demon. But a sword master was different. They were known for their agility, ever-changing styles, complex moves, and cunning attacks. Their style did not match him. Then what about the knife? If 90% of Sky Fortune Kingdom's martial artists used a sword, then of the leftover 10%, more than half most likely used a knife. The knife was less dexterous than a sword, but its striking power was strong. Its attacks were relentless and unceasing. In the hands of a powerful martial artist, it would be especially dominant. In a battle with many opponents, its endless attacks would be irresistible and unstoppable. In those cases it could be called the tyrant of weapons. But Lin Ming also felt that the knife did not suit him. Although the knife had overwhelming offensive strength at times, it had few attack methods. Though it could chop and divide with unprecedented aggression, it lacked an impression of irresistible force. Lin Ming suddenly remembered several days ago when he had met Lan Yunyu in the martial lecture hall. When the elder there had been discussing the basics, he had gone on length about a weapon, the spear. Very few martial artists used a spear in the Sky Fortune Kingdom. It wasn't because the spear wasn't strong, in fact, it was just the opposite. Every spear's attacks were mighty and indomitable. But spears were difficult to learn, and even harder to master. A spear took a long time to practice, more than any other weapon. A spear could divide, it could pierce, it could draw, it could push, it could dance like a flower, it could kill an encirclement of enemies. Its imposing aura was unrivaled and its attacks were unstoppable. To sweep away an army of 1,000, there was only the spear. The spear was called the King of 100 Soldiers. To be titled this, it was obviously formidable. But the spear was difficult to practice, and it was also difficult to wield. Even the construction of a spear was many times more complex than a sword or a knife. For blades like knives and sword, as long as the steel was fine, then it could be incomparably sharp. But the spear shaft needed to be rigid, yet flexible like a willow branch. Steel and iron simply didn't have the elastic properties required, and could not be used to make the shaft. But wood and bamboo, although they were flexible, they weren't stiff enough and the weight was also too light, and its lethality would only be ordinary. In a real fight it could easily be chopped in half by a bladed weapon. Therefore a high-quality treasure spear's value eclipsed that of a treasure sword or knife by 5 to 6 times, and there weren't many of them. Lin Ming fought on one hand, and on the other quickly deliberated on a choice of weapon. His mind ran through the elder's lecture on a spear's merits. However, in a life-or-death fight like this, to be distracted was only inviting disaster. As Lin Ming finally decided, a bolt of spider silk came flying at him like an arrow. Lin Ming jumped into the air, barely evading this danger, but in the moment when he was turning in midair, a sword came madly cutting at him from a tricky angle. Lin Ming only felt pain in his back as his blood shot into the air. He's injured. Outside the 10,000 killing array, Lin Ming's main body showed a reaction. There was a stuffy cough, and his face paled. This boy cannot last much longer. The observing martial artists let out a collective breath and relaxed. Most of the martial artists here didn't want to see others doing well. The 7 profound martial house already had 3 holy cows pressing down on them. They did not want another one pressuring them. It's already impressive that he lasted this long. 2 sticks of incense have been burnt. If he goes any longer then it will go against the will of heaven. He's done for. He might be able to reach a ranking around 150. Also outside the 10,000 killing array, even the dignified and haughty Zhong Kang was showing a change in complexion. Although Lin Ming's ranking now was nothing compared to him, but what rank one could achieve at their first-time ranking war symbolized their potential. That a 15-year-old could reach above around rank 150 with only a third-grade talent, it really made one alarmed and afraid. This Lin Ming definitely ate the Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill and the Golden Snake Scarlet Pill, and that's why he has such strength. Although this is only strength that came from taking pills, I cannot look down on him. Zhong Kang clenched his fist as he felt pressure descending on him. Chapter 62 The Final Grade. Chapter 62 The Final Grade. This wound isn't light. Lin Ming revolved the true primal chaos formula to suppress the injury, but it still bled. The wound's bleeding. My strength will slowly fall. It's impossible to wage a battle of attrition. If that is the case, Lin Ming's eyes were cold as he locked onto an early altering muscle martial artist and the crystal-backed spider. You too, I'm going to put my life on the line to kill you both. I will make the most of my remaining strength in the time I have left to obtain the biggest victory I can and try for my highest possible final score. Spear, to me. As Lin Ming thought this, the rows of weapons that had disappeared before reappeared in front of him. An Overlord spear appeared in Lin Ming's hand. It turned out to be the Overlord spear. This overlord spear was crafted with potent dark steel. Such a spear sacrificed its elasticity in exchange for devastatingly destructive power. The overlord spear's shaft was 8 feet in length and the spearhead was 8 inches long. The barrel was thick as an arm, and because it was made with heavy dark steel, the spear's total weight was 580 jins. With a sweep of the spear, even trees would be smashed apart. Lin Ming's arm strength was 3,200 jins. Wielding this heavy spear was just right. Good spear. Lin Ming laughed out loud as soon as he saw it. He tightly gripped the overlord spear and swept outwards in a great arc. A martial artist at the early 3rd stage, not realizing the change in circumstances, raised a sword to block the strike, but was only sent flying backward. Ha! Lin Ming shouted out and his entire body erupted in an imposing aura. A surge of overwhelming yang aura covered the entire area as it blotted out the sky with killing intent. The group of over 10 strong enemies were stunned by this cry, and were unexpectedly so shaken that they dared not step forward. The floor beneath Lin Ming shattered as he slammed his feet against the ground and shot forward like a beam of light. With an unbelievably imposing aura and a 580 jin overlord spear in hand, he thrust out at the crystal-backed spider. Hiss! The crystal-backed spider reacted and spat out spider silk straight at Lin Ming's chest. This spider silk could bind a human and it was also keenly sharp. It may not seem like an arrow, but it could pierce through a person's body. Even a master at the altering muscle stage could only evade when facing this spider's silk. But once dodged, the crystal-backed spider could also retreat and continue its long-range attack. Lin Ming did not dodge or evade. He ran at the spider silk and cut towards it with the overlord spear. How slender and thin was the spider's silk. The spear point was only a point. Hitting it at high speed was easier said than done. Although Lin Ming didn't know marksmanship, he had spent years delicately working with a deboning knife. With his keen eyes he had accumulated experience and precision. With just this, he had defeated Wang Yanfeng's 9 paths of truth with just his fists. But regardless of whether it was a fist or deboning knife, with this 580 jin overlord spear in hand, it was essentially no different than wielding anything else. "Break for me!" Lin Ming angrily shouted. The overlord spear hit the spider's silk. The spider silk was quick like an arrow, but its weight was actually like fluttering cotton. The 580 jin overlord spear meeting the spider's silk was like a galloping horse running into a fly. Its momentum not reducing at all, the overlord spear thrust straight into the crystal-backed spider's 8 eyes. The crystal-backed spider hadn't expected that its silk would be blocked by a spear. At this moment it was vulnerable to the cold, killing point of the spear. Speed was not a crystal-backed spider's strength. Its true power lay in its armored body, and its defensive abilities were comparable to stone pillars. It usually depended on this amazing defensive power to keep off its enemies. But even so, how could it block the 580 jin's overlord spear that was combined with Lin Ming's 3,200 jin strength? Pa! The crystal-backed spider had no idea at all as its brain was pierced by Lin Ming's spear. Tsi tsi tsi. The spider that was as big as a small cow was nailed to the ground with its 8 legs still twitching. A single spear had killed the enemy. Green mucus liquid shot out as Lin Ming pulled out his spear and rushed towards the other altering muscle martial artists to kill them. However, at this moment, there was faint sensation at the back of Lin Ming's mind, as if a poisonous viper was preparing to strike at him from behind. He dodged to the side, and a shining electric light ripped through the ground where he had been. Martial skill. Lin Ming immediately turned his head. Behind him was a phantom man holding a long sword and wearing a bamboo hat. Peak of altering muscle. This enemy was the one that appeared after he killed the crystal-backed spider. Not only did its cultivation reach the peak of altering muscle, but it could also use martial skills. Seeing that his enemy was someone at the peak of altering muscle, Lin Ming's heart was filled with a surge of heroic pride. This was the first time he had fought an enemy at the peak of altering muscle. Wasn't Lin Ming injured? Why hasn't he finished by now? This guy is too tough. The 3rd incense stick is already half burned. After he was injured he still managed to last another half stick of incense. There are only 6 people left on stage. The last person's result was 139. It's incredible that he is continuing to persist in there. Most of the present audience didn't want others to succeed. This Lin Ming is already injured. It's inevitable that his battle prowess will drop. Even if he's managing to stay in there because of his own stubbornness, it's not known how many points he could have gotten. As these people talked, 2 people on the altar gave a cough, apparently seriously injured. They were unable to last any longer and were shot out by the altar. One of them was shockingly Lin Ming. Lin Ming was pale, and his every breath was heavy. Overall, his performance this time was not perfect, or he would have been able to advance a few more ranks. But he didn't care. At his final moments, he was able to wield a spear to slaughter his enemies, including 2 enemies at the early altering muscle stage. He had immensely benefited from such a fierce battle. Lin Ming finally came out. It took 2.5 incense sticks of time. It's not too unreasonable. Looks like he will be able to enter the top 150 ranks. The Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill and Golden Scarlet Snake Pill are truly incomparably wonderful medicines. This boy was similar to Wang Yangfeng just a few days ago, but now after taking these 2 wonderful medicines he's at this level. Yeah, it would be great if I could eat it too. The crowd said. Many were envious and could not mentally accept Lin Ming's results. At this moment the ranking stone magic array flashed. The first light was a person who had come out at the same time as Lin Ming. After the flash, his name appeared in the 136th ranking. After the youth saw this result, he was utterly ecstatic. He was only 17 years old and had practiced martial arts for 2.5 years at the 7 Profound Martial House. To have this result was quite good. Then, Lin Ming's name flashed, and it suddenly vanished from the original place at the 210 ranking. More than 100 pairs of eyes were staring at the stone tablet as it updated the results. The ranking stone had altogether 23 rows. Each row had 10 names. Most people's eyes were looking at the 15th row, as this was the ranking of 140 to 150 and it was where Lin Ming's name would most likely appear. However, this section of the magic array's image was tranquil like water and did not have the slightest change. It was too late for anyone to feel surprise. The ranking stone's 13th row actually fluctuated. The 125th rank and 126th rank were pulled apart by an invisible force, and then the 2 characters Lin Ming impressively appeared among them. Lin Ming. Rank 126. Chapter 63 Divine Weapon Hall. Chapter 63 Divine Weapon Hall. 126. By heaven. He's only 15 years old. After the more than 100 disciples saw Lin Ming's position, there was a collective gasp among the audience. Even Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu did not achieve such an abnormal ranking. During their first ranking war, Ling Sen had been ranked 145, Ta Ku 142, and Zhong Guanyu had destroyed them both and passed through the top 140 rankings to reach the 138th spot. And even that was a far inferior result to Lin Ming's rank of 126. It had to be known that every step up the ranking was increasingly more difficult. This was truly a monstrous genius. Some people were still stubbornly staring at the ranking stone, as if they did not believe the results shown above. Is there a problem with the Cliff's magic array? It's only been 2.5 incense sticks worth of time. There is no way he could have reached the 126th rank. The ranking stone's inscriptions were drawn by a Xiantian master from the 7 Profound Valleys. How could there be a problem? The result wasn't wrong. If one wanted to advance past the 130 rankings, they would usually need to spend about 3 incense sticks of time. The only scenario in which they could have gotten more points is if their strength was high, and they didn't engage in an extended melee with the enemy, but instead killed them with only a few moves, a person slowly said. This person was Lin Ming's instructor, Hong Shi. Listening to Hong Shi's words, a few people's Adam's apple spasmed as they gulped down dry mouths. Strength that far surpassed the enemy, enough that they could not even retaliate. Does this little kid even have such a great power? This was too terrifying. Zhong Kang had an ugly facial expression as he stared at Lin Ming. 126. Although it was far from his current position, this youth was 3 years younger than him. This Lin Ming, I don't know what sort of godly material he's eaten to be powerful to such an extent, but he is only at the peak of the second stage of body transformation. Was he really able to absorb so much of the efficacy of the Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill and Golden Snake Scarlet Pill with only his medium third-grade talent? Lin Ming stared back at Zhong Kang, and a hint of fighting spirit glimmered in his eyes. With the rest of a month, surpassing Zhong Kang was not a problem. Good. You very good. A voice resounded in Lin Ming's ear. It was a greeting from Zhong Kang sent by True Essence. You really managed to give me a good surprise. Although you're only a trashy medium third-grade talent, you managed to absorb so much of the efficacy of both the Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill and Golden Snake Scarlet Pill and achieve rank 126. But you are far too naive if you think with just this measly performance that you will be able to defeat me in the leftover time you have. You also had some sort of ability to be able to get such wonderful medicines like the Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill and Golden Snake Scarlet Pill, but your luck ends at me. Even if you got this far, this kind of massive growth brought by the pills only means your true essence is impure. Do you really think you can purify it in the short time you have? You really think you can do that, boy? You will lose. Zhong Kang angrily said as he moved towards the 10,000 killing array. He was unable to recover his calm again. The last disciple who had participated in the assessment with Lin Ming was finally shot out by the 10,000 killing array. Although he had been inside the illusion for a very long time, his ranking was actually inferior to Lin Ming's. He had also managed to pass the top 130 ranks, but his was only 129th. The 10,000 killing array began to activate again as its symbols and runes lit up. Among the disciples sitting in the 12 spots was Zhong Kang. The assessment would begin. When the magic array began shining with light, Zhong Kang sat tranquilly on the altar with a calm appearance, motionless and every breath even and long, as if he were in a peaceful meditation. Although the 10,000 killing array was a magic array, the illusory world inside was inseparable from reality. Consuming true essence or physical strength would cause one's breath to accelerate and their heart rate to hasten. Even injuries would cause their bodies to pale and ache all over. With Zhong Kang so relaxed, the enemies he was facing in the magic array were not his current match at all. This fellow apprentice is Zhong Kang. He is a master at rank 109. Truly a fierce martial artist. As a new disciple heard this, his eyes filled with excitement and awe. This was the first time he had seen such a high-ranking old disciple. Yes, I heard that the last time he participated in the ranking war was 3 months ago. He should have made more progress by now. He might even make it to the top 100. Lin Ming watched the incense burn, and soon the second stick of incense was reaching its end. In the time it took for these 2 sticks of incense to burn, the 10,000 killing array had already ejected several disciples. One of them was one of the new disciples of the Earth Hall. His new ranking was 215, which wasn't too terrible a performance for his first ranking war. The third incense stick began to burn down, and it quickly burnt to half. With this, Zhong Kang had surpassed Lin Ming's time. But with his strength and age, it was natural that he would be able to persist in the dream world longer. No one present thought this was a mistake, only if Zhong Kang failed here would it be extraordinary. When the third incense stick completely burnt through, Zhong Kang finally appeared to feel weak. When the fourth incense stick started to burn, Zhong Kang coughed. He had clearly been injured in the 10,000 killing array, and when the fourth incense stick was half done, Zhong Kang was ejected from the altar. Final ranking, 103. After Zhong Kang emerged from the 10,000 killing array, he glanced at his new ranking and frowned, as if this result wasn't satisfactory. Although he had surpassed his old ranking by more than 5 positions, his original hopes had been to attack the top 100 rankings. He looked at Lin Ming, and said with voice transmission, "In the decisive battle 1 month from now, I'll wait for you there." But Lin Ming had not paid attention to Zhong Kang's words. He was thinking of the weapon he had chosen, the spear. He had to go find a good spear. The inspection continued through the entire morning. During the morning, most of the martial artists that came to be assessed were at lower level of cultivations, second stage and third stage of body transformation, and their rankings were outside the top 100. Shortly before noon, the more senior disciples finally started to arrive at the 10,000 killing array. These were the masters at the fourth stage of body transformation, altering muscle, and their strength was on a completely different level from the previous disciples. Several of them attained rankings in the top 50. Many of the new disciples of the Seven Profound Martial House were enthusiasm-filled youths who stayed to observe the ranking war, but Lin Ming instead departed early. If he could actually see these masters fight in combat, then he would certainly have stayed, but the only thing he could see at present were all of them sitting on the altar of the 10,000 killing array, so he wasn't able to glean anything from that and thus had no inclination to stay. Shortly before noon, Lin Ming made his way through several alleys and streets and arrived at Sky Fortune City's largest and most prestigious weapon shop, the Divine Weapon Hall. The Divine Weapon Hall was Sky Fortune City's most ancient weapon shop. It had been managed and handed down generation to generation from the previous dynasty. Its storied history might even have been more glorious than Sky Fortune Kingdom. 200 years ago the Sky Fortune Kingdom had been founded as a nation, but the Divine Weapon Hall had already been there for at least 100 years. Lin Ming peered at the Divine Weapon Hall from a distance. The massive pavilion-style building had 9 decorated stories, and there were soldiers scattered around that gave a feeling of supreme morale. The entrance was wrought with finely fashioned gold gilding. Above the entrance was a wooden banner with dignified characters brushed on with thick, black strokes and hooked by silver chains. Just by catching a glimpse of the entrance, it felt like there was a relentlessly imposing aura that rushed out at him. Without a doubt, the man who wrote the characters was a master of martial arts. There weren't many guests in the store, but of those there, more than half were martial arts experts, and several of them were powerhouses at the peak of bone forging. This made Lin Ming secretly startled. These experts were only a step away from the pulse condensation period, of course. Wanting to take that one step forward and reach that realm was an incomparably difficult step. Before Lin Ming had left the Seven Profound Martial House, he had put on the unique uniform of his school. So even though his age was still young, he managed to attract the sales clerk's attention. He was only a disciple of the Seven Profound Martial House, but their status was still very high. "Young hero, what sort of weapon would you like to purchase?" "Spear," Lin Ming replied. "Oh," the sales clerk said, slightly stunned. There weren't many people who came to purchase spears. Even if they did, it would usually be a tall and burly man. 99% of young men and students who came here would come to look at their swords. He hadn't thought that as soon this 15 or 16-year-old young man entered, he would open his mouth and ask to buy a spear. Chapter 64 Complex Craft. Chapter 64 Complex Craft. What sort of spear would this young hero like to purchase? And what sort of price are you aiming for? Do you have any rare treasures here? Lin Ming opened his mouth to ask. Treasure spears? The sales clerk didn't expect that this young man would surprise him again with such an astonishing question. A treasure spear was expensive, it often cost 10 to 20,000 gold taels, and high-quality spears sometimes even 30 to 40,000. Was this young man that wealthy? The reality was Lin Ming did not currently have that much gold on hand, but if he was given time he could plan for it. Young hero, our shop currently does not have any treasure rank spears on hand. If you would like to take a look at treasure rank swords or knives, we have a wide variety that you could choose from. Lin Ming felt a little disappointed at this turn of events. He hadn't thought that even the Divine Weapon Hall wouldn't have any treasure spears. There were just too few treasure spears. The sales clerk continued, for a treasure rank spear, there are just too few of those and the demand for them isn't low. 2 months ago we had a spear, but it was already reserved in advance and sold. Oh! From what I know, there aren't many martial artists in the Sky Fortune Kingdom who use spears. Are these treasure rank spears really that marketable? Millimeter. Yes, they are a very hot commodity. There aren't many martial artists that use them, but the army will. Some generals will purchase a treasure rank spear, but because there aren't enough treasure rank spears, even generals with illustrious careers and many meritorious military services do not have a treasure rank spear. If this young hero wishes to purchase a treasure rank spear in the Sky Fortune Kingdom, it will be very difficult. So that's how it was. Lin Ming immediately understood that the spear was the best weapon to use in the army. Since ancient times, as long as they were a famous military leader, 80% of them would use a spear in battle. The other 20% would use weapons like the large guandao, trident, halberd, and other weapons that were similar to a spear. There weren't many famous generals who relied on a sword or knife to lead an army. When marching an army to war, frequently one would be riding a war horse. During these times a sword or knife was just too short and limited in its range atop a horse. Therefore one had to use a halberd, pike, spear, or weapons like a spear that had good reach. With a spear in hand, even if they fell into a swarming mob of enemies, they would be able to kill their way through. A 10-foot-long spear could aggressively kill all enemies in a large circle. This was something that the sword, knife, axe, or other weapons could not hope to hold a candle to. Therefore the style that could sweep away an army of 1,000 was in the sole possession of the spear. That's why the generals of Sky Fortune Kingdom, even if they had cultivated as a martial artist with a sword, and fought with a sword, had no choice but to learn the spear. Well, for the treasure rank spear, I'll come back later when they have a good one on sale. A high-quality spear will probably cost several tens of thousands of gold taels, and I don't have that much money at the moment. The gold I spent before came from Mr. Mui, and though the inscription symbols are very expensive, I don't think he needs any more. I've been troubling Mui so often, several 10,000 gold taels is not a small number. I shouldn't approach him about this. Also, a treasure rank spear is difficult to use, and my martial arts cultivation isn't that high at the moment. Even if I had a treasure rank spear, I wouldn't be able to display its full strength. Thinking this, Lin Ming said, "Then consider that matter settled. Could you bring me to look at some spears, a good spear?" "Very well. Young hero, please wait a moment." The sales clerk turned around and took out a thick spear shaft from a wooden chest. The spear shaft was an inky pitch black and 7 feet long. When a store sold a spear, often the spear shaft and spearhead were sold separately. The spear shaft was placed in a wooden chest to protect it against erosion. The spearhead was soaked in a vat of tung oil to preserve it and guarantee that it would always be luminous and reflect the light. The customer would come choose the appropriate spear shaft and spearhead that they liked, and the two objects would be composed together to form the final product. "Young hero, please have a look," the sales clerk said as he handed over the spear shaft to Lin Ming. Lin Ming hefted the spear shaft in his hand. Its weight was probably somewhere around 30 jins, and was not made from metal. With a flex of his hand, Lin Ming could tell that the spear shaft was quite flexible. Lin Ming had no doubt that if he dropped this spear shaft in a full moon arc, it could crack open an animal's skull. Although this spear shaft wasn't made of metal, the damage it could cause on a person's body was equivalent to what a metal pole could do. "How much is this spear shaft?" Lin Ming inquired. 1,200 gold taels. Even though his heart was prepared, Lin Ming was still flabbergasted when he heard the ridiculous pricing. The spear shaft was just too expensive. It had to be known that a normal treasure rank sword would only be several thousand gold taels. This spear shaft was not a treasure. The waiter saw Lin Ming's astonishment and explained, this spear shaft was made from black iron wood. It was carefully selected from several hundred-year-old high-quality black iron wood that was soaked in spring water for 49 days. Afterwards it was boiled in a giant wok with explosive oil for 3 days. All the bark was stripped, leaving only the hardest and most durable wood core, and then mixed and twisted with the silk from a golden silkworm, then wrapped around with cloth from a golden silkworm that was soaked for 3 years in tung oil. Whether it is the black iron wood or the golden silkworm silk, both are precious materials that are hard for a sword or knife to damage. In addition to special crafting process technologies involved, this spear shaft will absolutely not be cut off in battle, even if it meets a treasure rank sword. This young hero may feel relieved that you will not be disarmed in any way whatsoever. Hearing the sales clerk's passionate explanation, Lin Ming also felt his heart jump. He hadn't thought that this common spear shaft would unexpectedly have such a complex and advanced crafting process. Golden silkworm silk was inferior, and cheaper than sky worm silk, but it was as an absolutely expensive material. The black iron wood was also very expensive, and it was even from a tree that was several hundred years old. Moreover, if there was a single mistake in the manufacturing process, then it would have been ruined. For instance, if there was a problem in soaking it in boiling oil, then the black ironwood would be ruined. The spear shaft also had to be straight and rigid, like a perfect ruler. If there was even the slightest diverging angle, it would be eliminated. This caused the spear shaft's value to increase many times. No wonder it was so expensive. Even if a common person did not eat or drink, and worked hard for his entire life, he would still not be able to afford one. If this kind of spear shaft was given to the normal folk, it would be passed down through generations as a precious family heirloom. The sales clerk said, "The most expensive part of a spear is the shaft. If a spear is good, then 80% of the reason would be because of the shaft and 20% because of the head. The spearhead crafting process is comparatively simple. A good spearhead is also only around a few hundred gold taels. This young hero, even if you chose a spearhead made from cloud vein wrought iron, it would only be 800 taels of gold. The total price will not be over 2,000 gold taels. What does the young hero think of this?" Lin Ming played with the thick shaft as he held it in his hands. He felt a slight sense of something like love towards it and found it hard to put down. Not to mention the shaft's elasticity and durability, it absolutely felt like a first-rate product. What a pity it was too light. Do you have anything heavier? For instance, a spear shaft that's several hundred jins. Oh! The sales clerk was slightly surprised. For a spear shaft that was several hundred jins in weight, to be able to wield it with dexterity like you were dancing, you would need at least many thousands of jins of strength. Did this youth have such a strong body? But even with his doubts, the sales clerk pulled out another spear shaft that was made from pure dark steel. This spear shaft was quite thick and was 7 feet long and weighed more than 400 jins. The sales clerk had obviously practiced moving this, as he strained a bit in taking it out but somehow managed it in the end. This spear shaft is 800 gold taels. Dark steel was expensive, but to produce a pure dark steel spear shaft was a relatively simple production process, therefore the metal spear shafts were also cheap. "Young hero, please be careful, it is very heavy." The sales clerk felt some trepidation as he handed the dark steel spear shaft to Lin Ming. But he was shocked to see that Lin Ming gripped it like an ordinary wood club, and did so while looking very relaxed. The sales clerk's eyes jumped. This young man had great strength. He was simply a vicious beast in human form. Lin Ming held the spear shaft in his hands and thought over it, then he asked, "Do you have anything heavier?" "Heavier? He wants something heavier?" The sales clerk said, "We do have heavier options, but the price is also very expensive." "It's all right." In order to avoid any future unnecessary troubles, Lin Ming flashed the gold banknotes in his chest pockets. Right now he still had 8,000 gold taels. As long as it wasn't as expensive as a treasure rank spear, he would be able to afford it. The sales clerk saw that thick wad of golden banknotes and was surprised. Such a thick stack of banknotes. This young man is really rich. He respectfully said, "Young hero, please come with me." With that, the sales clerk walked up to the second floor. Note, is what it means by saber. Not the version you're probably thinking of, not the Fate Stay Night character either. Chapter 65 The Heavy Spear, Penetrating Rainbow. Chapter 65 The Heavy Spear, Penetrating Rainbow. When they entered the second floor, there was suddenly far less people. There was a huge space with only a few customers milling around. A pessimistic middle-aged man wearing a long, grey robe was sitting behind the counter drinking a cup of tea. The sales clerk gave a respectful salute to the middle-aged man, then walked over and said a few words in his ear. "Oh, this young hero must choose such a heavy spear shaft." The middle-aged asked with interest as he looked at Lin Ming, "How heavy a spear shaft were you looking for?" 800 jins. 800 jins? The middle-aged man's eyes flashed a glint of light. An 800 jin spear would take at least 4,000 jins of strength to use. "Can you?" Lin Ming said, "Even if I can't freely wield it now, I will be able to later." "How bold. I will look for a spear shaft for you." The middle-aged man stood up and moved to the side. A moment later, he returned, carrying a long wooden chest. Although he appeared as if he was taking light steps, Lin Ming discovered that every step the middle-aged man took on the wood-paneled floor would cause a creaking sound. The wood panels were unable to withstand the weight of the load that the man was carrying. The wooden chest in his hands was clearly very heavy. The middle-aged man placed the wooden case on the counter and flipped open the lid. Inside was an 8-foot shaft wrapped in a thick cloth strip. The middle-aged man unraveled the cloth strip, suddenly revealing a dark purple shaft and a deep red spear head. On the dark purple shaft's body was engraved 2 characters that were written in inscription symbols, penetrating rainbow. The 2 plain words combined with the massive spear shaft made it feel as if there was a boundless gas rushing out. "Good spear," the middle-aged man said. "This spear is named the penetrating rainbow. Its shaft is 8 feet long and the head is 8 inches long. It is a half treasure." Half treasure? The middle-aged man said, "Only the spearhead is a treasure, the spear shaft is not, thus it is a half treasure." Lin Ming was suddenly enlightened. The crafting process that went into the spear shaft was complex, therefore it was too difficult to place an array on it. But the spearhead was the same as a sword or a knife, so it was easy to set an array on it and make it into a treasure. But alas, it was impossible to connect his true essence through the spear shaft due to it lacking an array, so its power was greatly reduced. The middle-aged man said, "Although the spear shaft is not a treasure, but if comparing the toughness, it could be equal to an ordinary human step low-grade treasure." The difference between a treasure and an ordinary weapon was that a treasure was inscribed with an array, and thus one could channel their true essence into it. It was not a fact that a treasure would be more durable or solid than an ordinary weapon. This weapon could not concentrate true essence. During an actual fight, as soon as martial skills were displayed, the disparity between the two would be evident. The treasure would be a step more powerful than an ordinary weapon. The middle-aged man continued, "This spear shaft was forged with dark purple elastic iron, and the spearhead was made from cloud vein wrought iron. Both sides of the spear's edge have been mixed with profound gold and are incomparably sharp. The spearhead and spear shaft originally came as a pair, they cannot be separated. The total weight is 820 jins. Dark purple elastic iron?" When Lin Ming had attended the lecture, he had heard the elder talk about this strange metal. This wonderful metal was unmatched in weight and also had a high degree of elasticity to it. It was even used to make strong bows. With a bow made from it, combined with the sinews from a high-level vicious beast to make the bowstring, it could easily project an arrow 2,000 steps away and pierce fine steel plate. If this dark purple elastic iron was used to make a spear shaft, even the thick spear shaft would be able to bend into a half-moon and snap back with enough force to crack open a tree. If a martial artist with 5,000 jins of strength shook it, even the light vibration from the oscillations alone could kill a person. However, for all its thousands or tens of thousands of good points, dark purple elastic iron had to be hammered innumerable times during its molding in order to forge it. It was impossible to inscribe an array upon it, as an array could not be hammered. Therefore this metal could not be used to make treasure weapons. Even so, dark purple elastic iron was cherished and loved by many refiner masters, because it was just too great and fitting a material to make a spear or strong bow with. Lin Ming took this spear shaft made from dark purple elastic iron into his hand. He shook it a bit, and all along the spear shaft it began to quiver. But the quivering was not too intense, because Lin Ming's strength was insufficient and could not shake the dark purple elastic iron. Even so, the middle-aged man was suddenly startled. This young boy, what an abnormal strength! If he could still shake the spear like that, his strength must not be less than 3,000 jins. And he was only at the peak of the second stage of body transformation. What a good physique he had. Lin Ming made a few spear movements with his hand. Even if he was able to raise a 820 jin spear easily into his hand, he could not wave it around with a high degree of fluidity. If he fought with such a weapon, even if Lin Ming had the true primal chaos formula supporting him, it would quickly exhaust his strength. But Lin Ming did not worry. Soon he would break through his bottleneck, and this weight would be just right in his hands. How much is this spear? 9,000 gold taels. 9,000. Lin Ming wasn't too surprised. This spear was worth the price. The cloud vein wrought iron treasure spearhead's price was 3,000 gold taels and the dark purple elastic iron spear shaft's price was 6,000 gold taels. Both of these prices were absolute bargains. Lin Ming pulled out all the gold banknotes he had on him, and even the gold-purple VIP card, and placed them on the counter. The Divine Weapon Hall was part of the Chamber of Commerce, thus the VIP card could give him a 10% preferential discount benefit and cause the price to become 8,100 gold taels. Even so, with all the gold Lin Ming had on his body, he was still missing 50 gold taels. The middle-aged man saw this VIP card and his eyes brightened. "Young hero, are you someone from the martial quarters?" Lin Ming thought about it, hesitated, and said, "No, it's just from my friend at the martial quarters." Although Lin Ming lightly said this, the middle-aged man knew that this young boy was definitely some important personage of the martial quarters, otherwise it would be impossible for him to have a VIP card, much less have one given to him. He said with a smile, "So that's how it is. Since this young hero is an honored guest of the martial quarters, for this spear, 8,000 gold taels is good enough. Many thanks." Lin Ming was not too sentimental. 100 gold taels was not much of anything to either him or the Divine Weapon Hall. The sales clerk bound the weapon in the cloth strip and placed it back inside the box. Lin Ming carried the box on his back, and after saying goodbye, returned to the back mountains. The shaft was made from dark purple elastic iron, and the treasure rank spearhead was made from cloud vein wrought iron. Such a wonderfully superb spear, it simply made Lin Ming too excited. After he arrived at the back mountains, he went to an open space. Because he was carrying a 820 jin spear, as soon as Lin Ming stepped on the grass with his feet, each step made a dent in ground. Feeling a heavy pressure on his back, Lin Ming's heart filled with a surge of heroic pride. He aimed at a big stone, and suddenly the spear cleaved downwards. There was only a bang sound as that giant stone was immediately pulverized by the heavy spear. Because of the spear shaft's elasticity, Lin Ming didn't feel any intense shaking in his hand. This was an advantage of the dark purple elastic iron. If this was a pure dark steel spear shaft, then this vibration would cause his thumb and forefinger to be numb. If the rebound force were any larger, then maybe his entire hand would be numbed. "Ha! What a good spear!" Lin Ming recklessly waved the spear around. He didn't know any spear techniques, and simply followed the same routine as his fist techniques. With an 820 jin spear in hand, his spear dance was a little haphazard. Lin Ming practiced for a quarter of an hour, and gradually felt his arm begin to swell, and his strength was somewhat weakening. This spear is heavy. At this time, in front of Lin Ming, a bright flame burst into life. Sound transmitting talisman. Chapter 66 Martial House's Resources. At this time, in front of Lin Ming, a bright flame burst into life. Sound transmitting talisman. In a quarter hour, arrive at the 7 profound martial houses martial stage. The martial house shall be allocating resources to disciples based upon their ranking in the ranking war. The martial house's resources. With his heart full of delight, Lin Ming strapped the long spear to his back and flew down the mountain as quickly as he could. Although he was moving at his fastest speed, he was still 30% slower than before because he was carrying such a heavy spear on his back. Before, he might have jumped his way through the tree branches with impressive force and agility, but at the present he could only run through the thick, knee-high grass, each step flattening the foliage underneath him, while he carried the spear on his back. But this failed to cause distress to Lin Ming. In fact, he was even more excited. Carrying such a heavy spear was also a form of practice. After a quarter of an hour, Lin Ming arrived at the martial stage at the 7 profound martial house. Instructor Hong Shi had already arrived there long before, and most of the 20 new students of the Earth Hall had also arrived. Seeing Lin Ming come, Hong Shi lifted a hand and tossed a jade slip to Lin Ming. "Resource details are inside. Look yourself." "Yes, instructor." Lin Ming poured his soul force into the jade slip. Inside was a detailed map of the 7 profound martial house, and the sections of resource locations at the martial house were outlined in detail. Inside the illumination of the jade slip were killing arrays used by martial artists to cultivate. They were the Golden Soldier Hall, Wood Puppet Lane, Lava Cave, Boulder Slope, Violent Wind Tunnel, and Thunder Valley. These 7 were known as the 7 major element killing arrays of gold, wood, water, fire, earth, lightning, and wind. These 7 major killing arrays were constantly in operation all year round, and they consumed a massive amount of true essence stones. Although the killing arrays were constantly in activation, they could only allow 12 people to cultivate at a time together. The 7 profound martial house had too many disciples. It was impossible to allow all of them to come as they pleased, so the only method to allocate time was for disciples to gain it for themselves by struggling their way up the ranking stone. Disciples that weren't on the ranking stone were not eligible to enter, and disciples followed the rankings to be allotted time. According to Lin Ming's ranking, every month he could practice at any killing array for 3 days. In addition to this cultivation practice, Lin Ming was also qualified to enter the 7 profound martial houses depository and select a low-grade human step cultivation method and 2 low-grade human step martial skill manuals. Lin Ming could not bring the cultivation method and martial skill jade slips outside of the 7 profound martial house, but he could bring them out of the depository and back to his own residence to study them in his own time. Martial skill and cultivation methods, and also arrays to cultivate at, these are the most valuable resources that the 7 profound martial house can provide. Martial skills can increase a martial artist's combat prowess and versatility. The cultivation method is the fundamental of martial art, and being able to practice in a killing array can speed up a martial artist's cultivation and enable them to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Many disciples come to the 7 profound martial house for these 3 resources. Out of these 3 resources, the most important is the cultivation method manual. But, I have the chaotic virtues combat meridians, so the cultivation methods they have here are of no significance for me. What I need most right now is a martial skill and a cultivation room. It's a pity that I can only practice 3 days per month. It just isn't enough time. I have to rise as fast as I can on the ranking stone. Lin Ming outlined everything he needed in his mind, then withdrew his soul force from the jade slip. Hongxi said, "Everyone has finally arrived. Now all of you follow me, we are going to the depository." The 7 profound martial houses depository was a pavilion that was divided into the inner and outer rooms. Only core disciples could access the inner pavilion. The outer pavilion was for the rest of the disciples. The inner pavilion contained top-secret cultivation methods and skill manuals that were left behind by masters and sages of the 7 Profound Valley. These manuals and jade slips were not permitted to be handed to outsiders, under great penalty. Lin Ming was only able to enter the outer pavilion at the moment. Although the outer pavilion's cultivation method manuals were a grade lower than the inner pavilion, they had a much larger collection and higher level of variety than the inner pavilion did. Inside were several thousand jade slips that had been collected and accumulated by the 7 Profound Valleys over 600 years. Occasionally, a 7 Profound Valley disciple would undergo a mission, and on the way, they would come into disputes with other martial artists and kill them. These martial artists often had cultivation method jade slips on them. Although these jade slips were useless to the disciples of the 7 Profound Valley, they were able to sell them to the sect, and this would increase the number of cultivation method jade slips that the 7 Profound Valley had. However, these cultivation methods were not the legitimate original methods of the 7 Profound Valley, therefore they would distribute these to the regional martial houses so that the disciples there could study them. Even so, all these cultivation methods were extremely precious within the Sky Fortune Kingdom. Out of the 20 new Earth Hall disciples, many of them had never practiced a cultivation method, so once they came into this outer pavilion and saw such a vast collection of options to choose from, many people grew breathless and colored with excitement. After Lin Ming arrived at the depository, he handed his jade slip in his hands to the warden elder who guarded the outer pavilion. Not only did this jade slip contain the distribution information on resources, but it also served as a record of Lin Ming's data and results. The warden elder examined the jade slip with his soul force, and then said to Lin Ming, "You may proceed. You may choose a cultivation method and 2 martial skills. You may bring the 3 jade slips out of the depository, but they cannot leave the 7 Profound Martial House. Also, if there are too many people wanting a jade slip, you will need to reserve an appointment, and the length of time you can study it is based upon your rank on the ranking stone. It was too difficult and troublesome to duplicate a cultivation method's jade slip, therefore each copy was rare and unique. Some cultivation methods were much more popular and coveted than others, and if many other disciples chose to study that specific one, then there would be a conflict in time and resources. To arrange the reservation time, that would depend on one's own ranking. Therefore, the low-ranking disciples often didn't choose a well-known or prominent cultivation method, otherwise they would not have many opportunities to study it. The 7 profound martial house really is where strength reigns supreme. Here, ranking is all that matters. Lin Ming sighed with feeling, and then walked into the depository. At this time, there were many disciples gathered in the depository, but none of them were making even the slightest sound. If one carefully listened, they could hear that these disciples were even holding their breath for the space of half an incense stick of time, as they were single-mindedly studying the cultivation methods in the jade slips. So many masters, Lin Ming lightly breathed. The 7 profound martial house was really a den of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Zhu Yang was a top-tier talent who ranked among the best in Green Mulberry City, but here at the 7 profound martial house he was only able to be in the top 30. Hongxi said, "Start to choose. Don't be anxious, there is plenty of time. Make your choice wisely." Jade slips that don't have a mark are the most basic of skills and cultivation methods. Those with marks on them have a grade. Red marks are low grade of the human step, and purple marks are medium grade of the human step. Near each jade slip is a record that shows how many people have chosen that one. If your ranking is too low, I suggest you to not choose one that is too favored, otherwise, since time is assigned according to your ranking, you may not have much of an opportunity to study it. According to the regulations of the martial house, between ranks 100 to 200, they could only choose a low-grade human step cultivation method manual. Lin Ming's ranking was relatively high, so he could choose a popular cultivation method. However, not even mentioning low-grade human step cultivation methods, even if it was a high-grade human step cultivation method, Lin Ming would be completely uninterested in it. But he still had to appear as if he wanted one. So he began to browse around all the shelves. Near each cultivation method was a label that was made of symbol paper which had the names of the disciples who had chosen that cultivation method. The popular cultivation methods often had 4 or 5 names, but the less popular ones often didn't have any names at all. The gap between various low-grade human step cultivation methods was just too great, thus the disciples who were over rank 100 learned cultivation methods far superior to those below them. Lin Ming looked for a while, and suddenly moved as he saw Zhong Kang's name. Shadowless art. I guess this is the cultivation method that Zhong Kang cultivates. As soon as Lin Ming looked at the label, he was stunned to see 7 names written on it. This cultivation method was truly welcomed by all. Lin Ming sank his soul force into the jade slip and saw the overview of these cultivation method pop into his mind. The shadowless art. Heavy offense, light defense. The cultivator's true essence density and purity would be extremely high, they could even compare with a martial artist a whole stage above. This is truly one of the best and most outstanding low-grade human step cultivation methods among its peers. It is not too far from being a middle-grade human step cultivation method. However, this cultivation method is not easy to practice, and those that reach the large success stage are too few, thus please be prudent in your choice. Seeing this overview, and reading that it was too difficult so one had to practice it with caution, Lin Ming only smiled and laughed. All of those in Earth Hall over rank 100 were talents. The more difficult it said it was to cultivate, the more those brave and arrogant geniuses would desire it. This cultivation method was also one of the best ones within its rank, how could they not want it? But certainly, in this cultivation method, Lin Ming had no interest. He continued to look around, and was preparing to casually choose one, but then his footsteps paused as he wandered near a bookshelf in a corner. Spear Arts. Chapter 67 Unknown Grade Martial Skill. Chapter 67 Unknown Grade Martial Skill. There is a cultivation method that contains spear arts too? That Wang Yanfeng's 9 Paths of Truth was a cultivation method that had sword skills. It seems some cultivation methods are particularly focused on certain types of weapons and they will have techniques related to them. Lin Ming reached up for a jade slip on the shelf named Foundation Spear Technique. Although the two-word foundation didn't have a glorious appearance of something of high quality, Lin Ming didn't mind. He sunk his soul force into the jade slip and saw the summary for this Foundation Spear Technique. The Foundation Spear Technique is the foundation for all spear skills. It teaches the straight thrust, the wide sweep, the flower dance, the killing circle, and other such primary spear skills. It does not contain any spear martial skills, and is one of the simplest low-grade human step cultivation methods. Seeing this, Lin Ming remembered Wang Yanfeng's 9 Paths of Truth when they had fought. Wang Yanfeng had used the 9 Paths of Truth and his true essence had transformed into 9 shimmering green runes on the blade of the sword. This martial skill was incomparably gorgeous and pleasing to the eye. Compared to the exquisite beauty of the 9 Paths of Truth, the Foundation Spear Technique just seemed too commonplace and ordinary. It only had the simplest style of spear skills, and that was why it was called the simplest kind of low-grade human step cultivation method. But Lin Ming didn't think that there was anything wrong or bad with simplicity. The more complex a cultivation method was, the more mistakes and flaws there would be, and spending a massive amount of time to practice this sort of cultivation method wasn't necessarily wise, as later he would have to throw it away. If that was the case, then it would be best to practice the most basic foundation skills. Learning the straight thrust, the wide sweep, the flower dance, the killing circle, and other such basic skills could never go wrong, as they related to all future spear techniques. As long as he practiced this simple style to the large success stage, he would be able to display its greatest strength. Lin Ming also had the top-grade body transformation manual, the Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridians, to make up for any disparity in martial skills. "I'll take this one," Lin Ming decided. He glanced at the side label of the Foundation Spear Technique and saw that it was completely absent of any names. The word foundation really caused others to not be able to feel any interest towards it, in addition to it being spear-related, which not many others practiced. "It's great that no one cultivates this. Now I don't have to reserve time." After choosing this spear art, Lin Ming began looking to choose his movement technique. He glanced over the available ones: Lost Steps, Heaven Passing Ladder, Cloud Hanging Rope, 7-Star Drifting Cloud, Swan Feather, and so forth. Each of these cultivation manuals were dazzlingly impressive and had kick-ass names. For instance, the Swan Feather Fall, it was said that after cultivating it to the large success stage, then one could use their true essence to fly unhindered into the deep blue sky, as if they were on a feather from a soaring swan. As for the 7-Star Drifting Cloud, it was said that after reaching the large success stage, one could take 7 steps at once, without being able to tell where it began and where it ended. It was as if every foot was passing on the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, and one would be able to tread on clouds and achieve godly speed within those 7 steps. However, Lin Ming shook his head as he examined all these. He wandered around the corner and chose a cultivation method named the Foundation Movement Technique. Lin Ming's idea was very simple. Reading between the lines of these movement techniques, they used some special way to circulate true essence and coordinate it with the strength of the leg and foot muscles, and thus create a method to move around. Although cultivating these movement techniques would make it possible to increase one's speed by several times, once he had a high-grade movement technique, then he would have to discard his old method and practice from a fresh start. Lin Ming did not want to waste his time on some low-grade human step movement technique. Although they had awesome-sounding names that were sweet to the ear, they were ultimately manuals that were discarded as trash by the 7 profound valleys and ultimately wound up here. He selected his movement technique, and now it was time to choose a martial skill. In truth, the martial skill was similar to the movement techniques. Once he had learnt something superior, the old one would eventually be replaced. But as of right now, Lin Ming lacked a true attack method, so he was prepared to select one that was good and combine it with his spear skills. Lin Ming's requirements were many. He didn't want anything fancy or pompous. He didn't want something flashy but lacking in substance. It had to be something that could be used in various situations, something that didn't use deceit or illusions to strike, something that wasn't low power, and something that could be used with the spear. Lin Ming examined almost all of the martial skills and couldn't find one that matched his criteria. No wonder, the Outer Pavilion's martial skills were trash that were eliminated by the 7 profound valleys. The 7 profound valleys was responsible for reviewing jade slips once they reviewed them. The elders responsible definitely had great insight. How could anything left over be good? While he continued to search as he felt some disappointment, Lin Ming suddenly stopped. Why are there broken jade slips here? Lin Ming found that hidden on a bookshelf were placed a number of broken jade slips. Are these also cultivation methods and martial skills? Lin Ming randomly picked up a jade slip piece and seeped his soul force into it, and the summary appeared in his mind: the high-grade human step martial skill. Martial skill is unknown. Loss rate is 90%. Once a jade slip had been broken into pieces, most of the information inside would also be lost. No matter whether it was a cultivation method or martial skill, once the loss rate reached 90%, there would be no way for even the most talented of talents to be able to practice it. Lin Ming continued to look and found that most of these broken jade slips were high-grade human step cultivation methods, and there were also several low-grade ones mixed in too. This was normal, after all. If it was only a low-grade cultivation method or martial skill, in addition to it being incomplete, then it definitely would have been thrown away long ago. Why would it be kept here? But too bad, even if it was a low-grade Earth Step cultivation manual, compared to the top-rank Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridians which came from the realm of the gods, it would be like comparing the heavens and earth. It was also incomplete, so what sort of value would it have for Lin Ming? Although these cultivation methods are high-level, the talented disciples will not choose these because they are just impossible to practice. I have the Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridians. There is just no point in wasting my time attempting these martial skills. Lin Ming did not care too much about this and was just about to give up looking, when he suddenly saw something in the corner of his eye and turned. It was a jade slip with a martial skill named the Body-Tearing Bone-Shattering First. This martial skill was missing its opening section, and therefore could not be given a grade. It was only the elder who was responsible for evaluating the jade slips that had placed it as a low-grade Earth Step martial skill. Body-Tearing Bone-Shattering Fist was really a vulgar name, compared to elegant and appealing names like Swan Featherfall, Cloud Hanging Rope, and other such grand atmospheric cultivation method names. It was simply a dirty beggar. But Lin Ming actually knew that the martial skill and cultivation method names were chosen by the creator. Some weaker cultivators were stuck at certain bottlenecks and could no longer progress. These weaker martial artists would spend their entire life creating a set of cultivation methods or a martial skill, and even though it was limited in ability, they would rack their brains to think of a charming and magnificent name. Superb martial skills and cultivation methods would never depend on the grandeur of their name to attract attention. This body-tearing bone-shattering fist could be said to be completely honest with its plain and vulgar words. However, Lin Ming noticed this manual not because of its name, but because of the effect its attacks would have on the enemy body. On the jade slip it described, the skin would show no wound, but the interior would be destroyed, therefore it is named the body-tearing bone-shattering fist. The skin would show no wound, but the interior would be destroyed. Lin Ming suddenly remembered the soft rigidity concept described in the Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridians. Strength trainings flow like silk. Strength trainings, so-called flow like silk, referred to complete control of one's strength and was the Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridian's strength training's large success stage. With flow like silk, as soon as one punched an ironwood tree, the bark would be fine, but the core would be turned into cotton fibers. Because there were missing sections in the memories of the elder, strength training's flow like silk had been a bit fuzzy and incomplete, therefore Lin Ming had not reached the absolute threshold of that stage. This body-tearing bone-shattering fist is a bit similar to Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridian's strength training's flow like silk. As they say all living things are connected to each other, perhaps the body-tearing bone-shattering fist also has the same principles behind it as flow like silk. Lin Ming continued to examine the body-tearing bone-shattering fist. Although this martial skill had many missing sections, the parts that were there were still able to give Lin Ming many enlightenments. Let true essence vibrate along the fist. If the vibration frequency is consistent, then resonance will occur, and this vibration can be transmitted to the interior of the enemy and destroy their bodies. So that's how it is. The senior who created this body-tearing bone-shattering fist must have had a very deep and comprehensive understanding of the relation between true essence and its utilities in strength. Although the realm of the gods' cultivation methods are absolutely exquisite and peerless, it can't be said that the skills of the realm of the gods are all things that the people of Sky Spill Continent cannot dream of or come up with. The history of Sky Spill Continent's inheritances and legacies has already surpassed 10,000 years. For 10,000 years there have been many peerless talents and monstrous geniuses. For them to achieve the same results in certain aspects of the realm of the gods is nothing strange. Thinking like this, Lin Ming chose this martial skill manual, and thus his set of 1 cultivation method and 2 martial skills was completed. Chapter 68 Lin Ming's Wonderful Selection. Chapter 68 Lin Ming's Wonderful Selection. As Lin Ming brought up his 3 jade slip choices of Foundation Spear Technique, Foundation Movement Technique, and Body Tearing Bone Shattering first, to register with the Warden Elder, he saw that there were several people waiting at the counter. They were Wang Yangfeng and several others. Hong Shi was waiting at the side, and checking which cultivation methods and skill manuals they had chosen. As the instructor for the newbie disciples of the Earth Hall, Hong Shi was only responsible for their general direction and had no specific obligation or duty to help them any further. However, this cultivation method choice was very important, so Hong Shi came here, fearing that the disciples in his care would make a bad decision and choose a cultivation method poorly suited for them. Wang Yangfeng, you've determined that you choose these 3 jade slips? The Warden Elder inquired. I do. Wang Yangfeng affirmed and nodded. You chose the Divine Yang Power, Swan Featherfall, and Thundercloud Strike. These 3 manuals are very difficult to cultivate, particularly the Swan Featherfall. It is very exacting in its true essence precision. If we are talking about reaching the large success boundary when you will be able to fly, it will be exceedingly difficult for you. Are you sure about your choice? Elder, I have already thought about this clearly. Wang Yangfeng had his own plans. His family had the movement technique 7 despairing steps. However, the 7 despairing steps was just a fraction worse than the Swan Feather Fall. But he would not give up the 7 despairing steps. The 7 despairing steps would be the martial skill he would use to accelerate and move in short distances, but the Swan Feather Fall was able to make one's body light like a swallow and was good for long-distance movement. Both complemented each other and filled the other's weaknesses, therefore he chose the Swan Feather Fall as it suited him the most. As for the God Yang Power, its difficulty was not as high. This was because his ranking was too low. Otherwise he would have chosen a cultivation method that was more difficult and had greater rewards in power, such as the Shadowless Art. All right. The Warden Elder reluctantly shook his head and registered the jade slips for Wang Yangfeng. These young geniuses all had aspirations that were higher than the sun. They would often choose the most powerful cultivation method and martial skills as soon as they could. However, such powerful martial skills and cultivation methods were not trifling in their difficulty. However, it was hard to question them about this. Young geniuses never considered the difficulty of a martial skill or cultivation method when selecting them. In fact, it could be said that they liked to use the difficulty as proof of their budding talent. But what they had forgotten was that in the 7 profound martial house, everyone was a talent. In the cultivation method, if there was a note that said extremely hard to practice that was naturally directed at these clueless talent. It's true that you are a genius, but how can you compare with all these other geniuses? After Wang Yangfeng were the 2 brother-in-arms Wang Mang and Li Tai. These 2 also had an outstanding display on the ranking stone, and so their choices in martial skills were similarly not easy. You've decided on these 3 cultivation methods and martial skills? We've decided. Okay, then next, Lin Ming. Yes. Lin Ming placed 3 jade slips onto the counter. Wang Yangfeng, Wang Mang, and Li Tai were naturally unable to not glance at them, and this included even the curious Hong Shi. Lin Ming's strength was evident to those that had met him, and they wanted to know what kind of ancient and supreme martial skill he had chosen. Wang Yangfeng gazed at the 3 jade slips on the counter. This Lin Ming, his ranking is 126. He might choose Shadowless Art, or even the Absolute 9 Yang, or some other top-level cultivation method. My strength is already behind him. If I suffer a loss even in cultivation methods, it will be even more difficult to catch up. I will only be chasing his shadow my entire life. Because he had suffered setback after setback, Wang Yangfeng no longer mentioned or even thought of Lin Ming's talent when gauging his strength. In his opinion, Lin Ming was a freakish existence that disregarded the talent barrier, and was the strongest match he had met in his life so far. Even though Wang Yangfeng had some apprehension about which cultivation method Lin Ming chose, the Warden Elder's next words left him dumbfounded. The foundation spear technique, foundation movement technique, and an incomplete body-tearing bone-shattering fist. Are these the 3 manuals you have chosen? These were the 3 sets of cultivation methods and martial skills. What even was this body-tearing bone-shattering fist? Wang Yangfeng had never even heard of it. But he did know the foundation spear technique and foundation movement technique. Wang Yangfeng had also passed by these 2 manuals when he was looking. These 2 set of foundation cultivation method and movement techniques might even be the most basic, simple, and ordinary low-grade human step manuals in the depository. Why would Lin Ming choose these? Does he have no confidence in himself? That's not right. His heart of martial arts was so firm, how could he not have confidence and belief in his abilities? The Warden Elder was unable to understand this choice. This foundation cultivation method manual was only ever selected by disciples of the Human Hall. In all the years the Warden Elder had worked here, he had seen disciples who had aimed too high and chosen a cultivation method that was far too difficult for them, and although mighty, inevitably were unable to master it and had wasted all their time. This kind of phenomenon was nothing unusual with talents and geniuses. However, this was the first time he had seen a new first-place disciple of the Earth Hall choose a cultivation method that was too simple, as if they were afraid to cultivate at all. And that low-grade Earth Step martial skill body-tearing bone-shattering fist was incomplete. It in fact was only graded that as a reference value. It was simply completely impossible to practice. Did this Lin Ming know that? What was he thinking? The Earth Hall instructor Hong Shi was standing on the side, and he also couldn't understand. He had come here today to help direct and guide these new disciples to choose a suitable cultivation method. He hadn't thought that the first one to go astray would be Lin Ming. He opened his mouth and warned, "Lin Ming, have you clearly thought about this?" Lin Ming nodded and said, "I thought about it. I want to build a firm foundation, so I chose a foundation cultivation method and a foundation movement technique." Hong Shi said, "Good. It's not wrong to want to form a solid foundation. You chose the foundation spear technique and the foundation movement technique. But this body-tearing body-shattering fist is missing more than 70% of its manual. Even if it is an unabridged low-grade Earth Step martial skill, it still needs extremely high perception and talent to practice, much less it is also missing 70% of it. Let alone you, even the elders of the 7 profound martial house would find it impossible to gain an understanding of it to cultivate. Otherwise, do you think that a low-grade Earth Step manual would be randomly found in the middle of nowhere in the outer pavilion? Would you like to change your selection?" Lin Ming replied, "I just wanted to meditate and ponder on it. Not cultivating it is not a problem. Also, I want to look at it to see if I can obtain some inspirations." "Obtain some inspirations?" Hong Shi frowned. Lin Ming was a 15-year-old youth whose cultivation was only at the peak of the 2nd stage of body transformation. And he wanted to be inspired by a low-grade Earth Step martial skill that was missing 70% of its contents. He was nothing but a moron who had gone too far in his idiocy, but his ambition was aiming at the top. "Lin Ming, you really have to guard against the mindset that you are going to get lucky. Don't take chances like this. Even peerless monstrous geniuses would not be able to cultivate the body-tearing bone-shattering fist. The opportunity to select a martial skill is very valuable. If you choose this, you will have wasted a chance. Although you will later enter the top 100 rankings and have opportunities to choose more, even one less martial skill is a huge pity." Lin Ming smiled and said, "Thank you, Instructor Hong. I have already thought about this and am clear in my decision." "Good, then do as you like." Hong Shi shook his head. These geniuses were just too stubborn. They wouldn't change unless they endured grief. So he would let him do this and then eat his regret. If he didn't suffer, then he wouldn't remember this. Like this, Lin Ming selected his cultivation method and martial skill jade slips. His name was written on a jade slip note, and then he received 3 keys. These 3 keys were actually 3 small ash-gray stones, and at the top of each was a red marking. Each key corresponded to a set of manuals. Once a new disciple chose a cultivation method, the jade slip would be sealed on a shelf for storage. Without the key to open the array, even if they entered the depository, they would not be able to look at anything. In a quiet, secluded clearing at the back mountains, Lin Ming sat in his yard on a stone table. He was meditating in tranquility, as spinning autumn leaves slowly fell around and on his shoulders. In the peacefully quiet autumn morning, Lin Ming had risen out of bed before sunrise to breathe in the fresh mountain air and get his mind into its optimum condition. In a quiet, secluded clearing at the back mountains, Lin Ming sat in his yard on a stone table. He was meditating in tranquility, as spinning autumn leaves slowly fell around and on his shoulders. In the peacefully quiet autumn morning, Lin Ming had risen out of bed before sunrise to breathe in the fresh mountain air and get his mind into its optimum condition. Lin Ming had placed the body-tearing, bone-shattering fist jade slip on the stone table. This was an incomplete earth-step martial skill. Even if Lin Ming had the chaotic virtues combat meridians as reference to help guide him, he still needed an extremely high level of perception to be able to fuse the two. Perception had nothing to do with one's martial talent, but it did touch on one's soul talent a bit. Lin Ming's soul talent was primary 4th grade. Martial artists' soul talents were generally low. Lin Ming's soul talent could be considered top tier in the Sky Fortune Kingdom, and was equal to superior 4th grade talent in cultivation. Lin Ming was adjusting his mind and emptying his useless thoughts. He was ready to use the entire day to perceive and understand the body-tearing, bone-shattering fist. He sank his soul force into the jade slip, and in Lin Ming's mind appeared the incomplete scripture of the body-tearing, bone-shattering fist. This body-tearing, bone-shattering fist, the very beginning is incomplete. The body-tearing, bone-shattering fist was missing 70% of its information. If this debilitating flaw was only in the second half of the manual, then an unrivaled talent might be able to practice a small part of it. But currently, the missing sections started at the beginning. Moreover, the flaws also passed through the entire heart mantra, which made this simply impossible to practice. No wonder this body-tearing, bone-shattering fist was lying out on the corner and no one asked for it. Even though the concept of vibrating one's own true essence was simple, there wasn't even an explanation on how to begin practicing the hand movements. The passage from the introduction which describes this is missing. However, in Lin Ming's memories from the Elder's soul fragment, there was a vaguely basic and fuzzy memory of what strength training's flow like silk was like. Lin Ming took these 2 sets of manuals as one and began to reflect upon them together. He began to have a faint feeling as if he was just tracing the beginning of strength training's flow like silk. Breathing, Lin Ming mumbled as he pondered, the true essence vibrations start is breathing. In the soul fragment's memories, he had learned that the human body was composed of millions upon millions of tiny units. Whether it was the skeleton, or muscles, or blood, or anything else, they were formed from these small units that were smaller than dust. However, they actually had a very complex structure, and played different roles in the human body. When cultivation had reached a high enough realm, true essence would condense in the eye, and their vision would be improved to the limit of limits, and they would be able to discover these tiny units. Each of these tiny units was alive. Each could breathe. The average person's body's tiny units would have a breath disorder from all these tiny units breathing at different times, but if they managed to reach the large success stage of strength training's flow like silk, they would be able to control the breathing rate of these tiny units so that they were consistently unified, and it would then resonate. This was the beginning of strength training's flow like silk, and was also the beginning of true essence vibration. According to that elder's memories, when a human was first conceived, in their mother's womb they would be just a tiny unit that would grow. At that time, because the tiny unit is just one, their breathing frequency was consistent, and thus an embryo's breath was purest at that moment. Lin Ming was suddenly enlightened. Was it possible that the senior who created the body-tearing, bone-shattering fist had also discovered the secret behind the tiny units of the human body? This body-tearing, bone-shattering fist was missing its beginning portion. The grade of low-grade earth step was assigned to it by an elder at the Seven Profound Valley who was responsible for examining the jade slips before deciding where they went. Now, it seemed that it hadn't been wholly accurate. It was very possible that this was an even higher-order cultivation method. But adjusting the whole body's tiny units so that their breath was consistent was not a simple matter. The body-tearing, bone-shattering first was completely missing this part in its instructions. Lin Ming could only diligently try to recall bits and pieces from the fuzzy memories he had. Adjust the body through true essence to control the breathing of the tiny units, and finally achieve the goal of changing the tiny units' breathing rate until they are consistent. Lin Ming sat down cross-legged and began to revolve the true essence within his body. He unendingly tried to match his own breathing with that of the tiny units inside his body. Once. Twice. Lin Ming felt his breath become longer and longer. Gradually, he felt his own breathing begin to enter a subtle boundary. He began to feel his consciousness fade away, and his body become empty nothingness. The uncountable tiny units within his body began to move along with Lin Ming's breath as if they were vibrating. He felt a scalding, burning sensation as if he were being swept away by a tide. Lin Ming was in constant meditation and reflection. Like this, he sat in the courtyard for an entire day. That day, Lin Ming was like a still pond. Leaves fell on his shoulders, his head, and his arms, but Lin Ming remained motionless throughout. It wasn't until the sun set over the mountains that Lin Ming woke from his long period of contemplation and slowly opened his eyes. This true essence vibration and strength training's flow like silk boundary are just too mysterious. I have used an entire day but only managed to finally touch upon a clue. This true essence vibration involves the hidden secrets of the human body. The average person would simply not think of this. It is too fantastic. Although he hadn't progressed much, Lin Ming had clearly seen the approximate direction to go. If he slowly perceived this through mediation, he would sooner or later be able to find out the mystery. Lin Ming put away the jade sleep. Strangely, though he hadn't eaten the entire day, he didn't feel any hunger in his belly at all. Martial artists before the pulse condensation period had to eat meals and drink water just like the average man. Even someone at the pulse condensation period could only stand hunger a few more days than a normal man. If they didn't eat for a long time, they could also starve to death. I'm also not hungry at all. It seems the tiny units in my body have already breathed in true essence and are full. Strength training's flow like silk is too wonderful. It's only today that I realize that perhaps the so-called strength of strength training's flow like silk is not physical strength at all, but true essence strength. If I practiced true essence strength until I could freely wield it at will, then this would be the large success of strength training's flow like silk. Lin Ming was unable to restrain a sigh filled with emotion. The chaotic virtues combat meridians were broad and profound. Over the countless long years, the realm of the gods sect seniors had been unendingly revising and cultivating the chaotic virtues combat meridians. Each method inside was the sum of endless experience and had been time-tested. He had practiced it until now and had reached this level of cultivation, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. This is as far as I go today. Tomorrow I'll have a look at the 7 profound martial houses' 7 large cultivating rooms. I wonder what sort of mysterious effects these places will have on cultivation. In the time that Lin Ming had practiced strength training's flow like silk, Zhong Kang and Zhu Yang had walked together into the 7 profound martial house depositories. This Lin Ming just chose a cultivation method. But with only 1 month, his practice will be inadequate regardless. Zhu Yang said as he held a purple jade slip in his hand. This color represented a middle-grade human step cultivation method. Zhong Kang said, I wonder what kind of cultivation method that boy will choose. Zhu Yang sneered, this Lin Ming is too confident in his own strength. When he was at the first stage of body transformation, he had threatened to overtake me. He will certainly choose some popular cultivation method that is difficult to cultivate. If so, even if his perception is good, I will let him have no time to practice. The popular cultivation methods needed an appointment in order to see them. But a time reservation's length was arranged according to one's own ranking. Sometimes a cultivation method had 5 to 6, or even 6 or 7 disciples waiting in line to study it. At this time, the allocated time would depend on ranking to be given out. If your ranking was low, then you would be at the end of the line and see very little of it. But usually, of these 6 to 7 people, there were always several that were senior disciples. They had already studied these cultivation methods for a long time, to the extent that improving their own cultivation method by seeing the jade slip was useless. What they needed was more and more practice and actual combat. However, there was also no stipulation that said that senior disciples could not continue taking advantage of the jade slip. As long as Zhu Yang abused his relationships with people, Lin Ming would have to frequently let other people borrow the jade slip, and Lin Ming would not have the jade slip to practice. Obstruction was within the regulations of the 7 profound martial house. Zhu Yang could not flagrantly deal with him, but he could do something that would hinder and disgust him. Zhong Kang and Zhu Yang went looking through the bookshelves for Lin Ming's name. They examined the jade signs for names. Naturally, the first ones they looked up were Shadowless Art, Absolute Nine Yang, and other such top heart mantras and cultivation methods. However, they could not find Lin Ming's name among any of these. They retreated and thought for a moment, then continued looking through the lower-level cultivation methods, but still hadn't found Lin Ming's shadow. Millimeter? What's going on? Zhu Yang frowned slightly. Zhong Kang suddenly said, Zhu Yang, here, I found it. Zhu Yang walked over and saw Lin Ming's name on a very short note. The note only had one name. Zhu Yang was slightly stunned. That this note only had one name proved that this cultivation method was a skill that received very little attention. Foundation spear technique? This Lin Ming actually chose this cultivation method. What the hell was he thinking? I also found the second. Hearing Zhong Kang, Zhu Yang looked again. This time, he was shocked once more. Foundation movement technique? Lin Ming had chosen the foundation spear technique and the foundation movement technique. Zhu Yang was mind-boggled. This was inconceivable. Seeing Lin Ming had chosen these cultivation methods, Zhong Kang said, Zhu Yang, you really overestimated this Lin Ming. After he attained the rank 126 on the ranking stone, I thought that he was some sort of impressive character, but it seems like only his luck is good. He had some sort of fortuitous encounter, so his strength rapidly increased. But sooner or later that will be useless. Look at these 2 sets of manuals. Relying on these, how could he possibly hope to face other experts? Chapter 70 Icy Pond Waterfall. Chapter 70 Icy Pond Waterfall. Seeing Lin Ming had chosen these cultivation methods, Zhong Kang said, Zhu Yang, you really overestimated this Lin Ming. After he attained the rank of 126 on the ranking stone, I thought that he was some sort of impressive character, but it seems like only his luck is good. He had some sort of fortuitous encounter, so his strength rapidly increased. But sooner or later that will be useless. Look at these 2 sets of manuals. Relying on this, how could he possibly hope to face other experts? Zhong Kang believed that with Lin Ming's talent, even if he practiced the foundation spear technique and foundation movement technique, there was no way that he would have any decent results with it. If he insisted on practicing these garbage skills, the only thing that would grow was the disparity between them. He is self-aware that his qualifications are inferior to others, so he dares not select a cultivation method that is difficult. This kind of person that lacks any semblance of self-confidence, what martial skills could he possibly cultivate? Hearing Zhong Kang's derisive words, Zhu Yang frowned as his brows knitted tightly. He laid down the jade slip and said, Zhong Kang, I advise you not to have a low opinion of your opponent and underestimate him. Maybe this Lin Ming lacks confidence, but don't forget, he broke Ling Sen's record for passing the dream trial that tested one's heart of martial arts in the entrance exam. When Zhu Yang said this, Zhong Kang stopped talking. When he had first participated in the dream trial, it had taken him 3/4 of an hour. He had done far worse than Lin Ming. He knew what it meant to pass that hurdle in less than an incense stick worth of time. Let's continue looking. I want to see what sort of martial skill he chose. They turned to look again, and after a long time, they only found Lin Ming's name on an incomplete jade slip's note. Missing 70% of its contents, body-tearing bone-shattering fist. Usually Zhu Yang was calm, But after seeing this note with Lin Ming's name, his eyes widened. Was this Lin Ming insane? He didn't know what grade or rank this body-tearing, bone-shattering fist was, but he estimated it to be a low-grade earth-step skill. With a manual of this grade, even if it was at the Seven Profound Valley main sect, it would be a martial skill that wouldn't be passed down to outsiders. If there was even the smallest chance at all that someone could find inspiration from this, it would absolutely be impossible for this to be found in the depositories of the Seven Profound Martial House. Having seen this martial skill, Zhu Yang didn't hesitate to give up. Let alone himself, even if it was the Seven Profound Martial House's Heavenly Abode's #1 talent Zhong Guanyu, and also core disciples like Qin Xingxuan and so forth, they would not be so presumptuous to consider this body-tearing, bone-shattering fist. That was simply biting off more than they could chew. This Lin Ming was just too crazy. If he had just chosen the foundation spear technique and the foundation movement technique, then Zhu Yang might have guessed that there was some profound and immeasurably deep meaning behind these choices, but since he chose body-tearing, bone-shattering fist, Zhu Yang only thought that Lin Ming was a half-baked idiot. This Lin Ming, not only are his qualifications poor, but it seems he has some problems in the head. Only if he had the mind of a pig would he choose a martial skill like this. Zhong Kang quipped. This time Zhu Yang didn't argue, he just didn't know what this Lin Ming was thinking. Zhu Yang said, Zhong Kang, although the martial skills and cultivation methods Lin Ming chose aren't normal, there is no need to not be careful. There's nothing wrong with not taking an opponent lightly. This Lin Ming is still rank 126 on the ranking stone. The reason is he should have eaten the Golden Snake Scarlet Pill and the Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill, and was able to absorb these two pills so well that it even startles me. Rest assured, he is not my match by far. After 20 more days, it will be the day of the match. I will completely and thoroughly defeat him. Not only must you win, but you have to destroy his confidence. Let him suffer humiliation as much as you can within the rules. You can even severely wound him and disable him. Even if his body was cured with some rare and precious medicine, it would still leave behind a hidden injury and affect his future martial arts cultivation. This Lin Ming relied on some fortuitous encounter to want to fight with me, and he wants to take my woman. I will grind him under my foot and make him unable to ever recover. Zhu Yang said this with a cold eye. He subconsciously gripped his fists as if he were crushing Lin Ming into dust. The 7 Profound Martial House's cultivation rooms were divided into the 7 major killing arrays that each represented gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning. They were the Golden Soldier Hall, Wood Puppet Lane, Icy Pond Waterfall, Lava Cave, Boulder Slope, Violent Wind Tunnel, and Thunder Valley. These 7 major cultivation rooms were not normal magic arrays, but true killing arrays. A magic array could only create illusions in the mind. No matter how real these illusions seemed, they weren't like killing arrays and could only kill a person in their mind. Once they awoke, the illusion would be broken, and it could thus not serve to cultivate body transformation. Only a true killing array could be used to cultivate and achieve the body's potential. Of these 7 major killing arrays, each could have 12 people practicing on them at once. Because the killing array's activation and maintenance consumed a large quantity of true essence stones, many times more than magic arrays, the spots were limited. Therefore the time allotted was based upon one's ranking on the ranking stone. If one was lower than rank 180 on the ranking stone, they could practice for half a day every month. If they were between rank 150 and rank 180, they could practice for an entire day. As for ranks above 150, there were many stipulations, and the time allotted was accurate to the hour. For ranks higher than 50, the time was increased every 10 ranks, and as for the final top 3 ranks, they could practice for 10 days every month. Factoring in rest and time to cultivate, they could be practicing inside a major killing array whenever they wanted to. Lin Ming had checked his jade slip. His own rank was 126. He could either practice for 2 days all day, or he could take 24 hours and divide at as he liked. If he did, Lin Ming would have to make an appointment and then come at that time. Naturally, that spot would be emptied for him for that period. But if he didn't arrive for his appointment, then his time for that period would still be used. The 7 major killing arrays were located at 7 different places within the 7 profound valleys. To get there, at the center of each array was a total transmission array. All disciples' practices were arranged by the transmission array's administrative office. All new students, you have the chance to enter any one you like for 1 hour. This time does not calculate into your total time. Before entering the killing array, you may let the elder responsible for the arrays help you choose an appropriate difficulty. Here is a reference chart with approximate difficulty levels and their relative rankings. You may have a look. The elder responsible for the transmission array slowly said. He then registered everyone's scores, and slowly passed them a reference chart. Lin Ming looked at the chart. His own rank was 126. This corresponded to a 7th level of difficulty. Out of the gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning arrays, which one should he choose? As Lin Ming hesitated, Hongxi said, "I'm warning you, these 7 major killing arrays are the real deal. If you mess up inside, you will be severely injured. So do not choose a difficulty level that is too high, or more than you can handle. Also, of the 7 major killing arrays, do not choose the Thunder Valley. The others are okay. If you have any soul-gathering pellets, you should consider taking one. Although you only have 1 hour of test time inside, this time is also precious. This practice may be able to stimulate your body's potential." Lin Ming just happened to have a soul-gathering pellet on himself. He listened to Hongxi's advice and ate it. And he couldn't choose the Thunder Valley? Was the Thunder Valley too difficult? Or were there other reasons? Lin Ming didn't ask, but instead finally decided upon the Icy Pond waterfall. The 7 major cultivation arrays created the realm using the local environment, and their designs were specialized to the terrain and topography of the land. The construction design was very ingenious. Lin Ming chose the Icy Pond waterfall. Originally it was a natural waterfall of the Dew Mountains, but after being transformed by the array, the pouring water of the waterfall now contained a formidable pulse and energy. The pond that lay underneath the waterfall also became incomparably and extraordinarily cold, with a bone-piercing chill. As he arrived at the canyon where the Icy Pond waterfall was, Lin Ming could distantly hear a sound like thunder, as if an underground earthquake was happening. The Dew Mountain waterfall was the highest waterfall in the Sky Fortune Kingdom, and the height from top to bottom was 300 feet. The current of water above directly impacted down below, and the strength of the water was similar to being hit by a sledgehammer. The deep pond below was a result of then 1,000 years of that waterfall impacting below. The depth of the pond had already reached 1,000 feet. Under that terrifying water pressure, even a master at the pulse condensation period would shrink back at the sight. As Lin Ming arrived at the Icy Pond waterfall, there was giant curtain of water as if the entire pond was steaming. This was from the torrential downpour and immeasurable amount of water that was splashing dozens of feet into the air. The rumbling sound of the waterfall even faintly shook Lin Ming's heart with its resonance. "Great waterfall!" Lin Ming shouted with his heart filled with emotion. This was the first time that he had seen such a marvelous wonder of nature. Chapter 71 Cultivation Method Complete. Chapter 71 Cultivation Method Complete. As Lin Ming walked before the waterfall's array, a deacon was there waiting, who appeared to be around 20 to 30 years old. The deacon had already been given advance notice. He said to Lin Ming, "Junior Apprentice Lin, you may go in. There is a 1-hour time limit." The array was especially for new disciples today. The difficulty has already been set at level 7. Are there any questions? What a troublesome fellow senior apprentice. Lin Ming thought, but he did not care too much. This 7th level of difficulty corresponded to the ranks 110 to 130. His ranking of 126 was near the bottom of that. He would start from the foundation, and then come back again for a more difficult challenge later. You can enter. Although you just barely suffice to enter the 7th level of difficulty, your cultivation is limited. If you cannot handle being inside, come out to rest. Generally, one cannot stay inside for too long. If you are in there longer than your body's limits, you may end up damaging your health. The deacon senior apprentice reminded Lin Ming. Thank you, fellow senior apprentice. If I cannot bear it, I will say so. Good. The deacon's senior apprentice said as he opened the array. Looking in from the outside, the icy pond waterfall was an ordinary waterfall, just a massive one. But as he made a few strides towards it, the scenery suddenly changed. Lin Ming arrived at a new space, and was unable to sense anything from the outside. Although the icy pond waterfall was a killing array, it also contained an illusory magic array inside. Because of this, 12 people could practice in the array at the same time and yet not be able to see anyone else. This was because the illusory magic array would isolate one from all 11 other people as they cultivated. After all, no one was willing to cultivate next to others that were watching. Lin Ming turned around for a moment, and behind him had already become a completely dark, jet-black world. It was as if the waterfall was suspended in the starry night sky. The icy pond of the waterfall was 1,000 feet wide and deep blue like glacial ice. Although it wasn't too far from the waterfall, it was unusually quiet and still, and not a single waterline was seen. There was a dense fog that floated over the surface and covered half of the icy pond. Just look, you can feel the chilling cold. This cold air is even frostier than the winter north wind. Lin Ming took a deep breath, revolved his true essence to the limit, and then plunged into the frigid pond. Good cold. After jumping into the icy pond, Lin Ming felt the freezing cold. He had no doubt that if this was in the outside world, the water would already have frozen over. But in the icy pond waterfall array, this frigid water actually remained liquid. It was just amazing. Lin Ming circulated the true primal chaos formula to the extreme. His muscles also continuously trembled, as they were trying to give off a feverish heat in order to resist the cold. This water, how does it feel? A little like mercury? Lin Ming began attempting to dive, but found out that the water contained a bewildering resistance. As he splashed some water around, it was just as if he was playing with mercury. The water was obviously much thicker and denser than ordinary water, and also more sticky. If this was a normal pond, then if he exhaled deeply all the air in him, he would naturally sink into the water. But in this icy pond, it easily felt as if he were being pulled downwards. Even swimming forward was slower. It was said that this icy pond was 1,000 feet deep. I don't know who could have possibly measured it. With my current condition, let alone diving 1,000 feet, even a few dozen feet would be extremely difficult. The man who could dive all the way down is truly a master. The deeper the icy pond was, the colder it would be. The chill felt as if it had a faint spiritual intellect to it. It was as if it were trying to worm its way into his skin through his pores, sneak into his blood, and penetrate to his marrow and freeze it. Lin Ming didn't doubt that if someone who didn't know martial arts came in here, they would instantly be frozen to the point where they would be unable to move. Their blood would then turn to ice also, and they would die. My hands and feet are already starting to freeze. What an amazing fierceness. Lin Ming had already submerged himself 30 feet down. At that depth, Lin Ming felt countless cold needles stabbing his body. Because the cold here was to the extreme, the cold feeling became an aching pain. He was unable to dive further than here, otherwise he would be in danger. Although I cultivate the true primal chaos formula and my true essence is much more condensed than a normal martial artist's, my cultivation is still too weak. Others that can come to the 7th difficulty level are usually those at the 3rd stage of body transformation or above. Is that a stone platform? Lin Ming found that several dozen feet away, there was a flat stone outcropping on the wall. He made an effort to swim over, concentrated his true essence, and then stood on the stone platform. Martial artists could take deep and long breaths. Although Lin Ming had not achieved the viscera training stage, with one breath he could stay underwater for about the time it took to burn an incense stick. He sat down cross-legged on the stone platform and began to use his full energy to revolve the true primal chaos formula. As everything all around him was unusually quiet, it was as if Lin Ming had entered into a separate space and time that had paused. Even as the chilly water of the icy pond flowed past him, Lin Ming could only hear his long and slow rhythmic heartbeat like a pendulum that was swinging back and forth, without a trace of chaos. At that moment, it seemed as if Lin Ming's soul had risen from his body. His body had not even the tiniest bit of sensation. He didn't have a shred of perception, and had completely become absorbed in a trance-like state. Each and every inch of his muscles were resisting the chilly water. His true essence didn't seem to be completely under his control. It was as if it was revolving by itself. It was like it had fused to the inertia in his body, and the circulation of true essence in his body was running down incomparably exquisite lines. It was far more accurate than Lin Ming's revolution of true essence and was also several times faster. Lin Ming had just reached True Primal Chaos Formula's first layer's large success stage, and the speed at which he could revolve his true essence had increased. But now, it had even hastened more than before. It could be said that this was double the threshold of the True Primal Chaos Formula. It was a pity that this circulation speed was not something that Lin Ming could consciously drive, but was being done automatically, which he could not achieve. After an unknown amount of time, Lin Ming suddenly woke up from this trance state. Millimeter? What's the matter with me? There was a slight tightness in his chest from holding his breath. Lin Ming exercised his true essence and surfaced from the water, gasping for breath. As he breathed in the icy air, this air was also similarly bone-chilling, and when he breathed in the air, it coated the edges of his mouth with a layer of frost. Lin Ming recalled the state he had been in a moment ago. That feeling was similar to the feeling of all the tiny units in his body resonating together, as was described in the body-tearing, bone-shattering fist, the marvelous boundary when the breathing of his entire body and all its tiny units would be consistent. If a normal martial artist's breathing exercises were due to their conscious decisions and thoughts, then Lin Ming's breathing just down was as if the tiny units in his body had all breathed spontaneously, as if Lin Ming's consciousness was separate from it. His true essence has deferred to its instinct and revolved completely of its own will, and its revolution route could be called perfect. Lin Ming returned to that stone platform, as he wanted to reproduce that state. However, he couldn't realize this state again. The True Primal Chaos Formula seems to have improved further and achieved the perfect stage. When Lin Ming revolved the True Primal Chaos Formula to resist the cold, he impressively discovered that his true essence circulation speed had increased by 40%. This was the perfect stage of True Primal Chaos Formula's first layer. Large success is easy, perfect is hard. Lin Ming thought that he would achieve the perfect boundary of the first layer of True Primal Chaos Formula faster than normal, but he did not think that he would achieve it so quickly. Was this because of the state I was in a moment ago? Lin Ming's heart jumped crazily. It was said that sometimes a martial artist would enter a mysterious state, for instance what they called sudden enlightenment and so on. The ancient books had recorded that a martial artist would sit under a Bodhi tree and meditate under a cliff for one night. Overnight their hair would turn white, they would awaken and discover that their cultivation method had reached the large success stage, and their cultivation had progressed by leaps and bounds. There were even ancient legends that said one could obtain enlightenments and become an immortal, and break from the mortal void. Perhaps just now he had entered a similar state to that sudden enlightenment or some other marvelous boundary. Sadly, he had only been in that state for a very short time. Even so, he had obtained enormous benefits from it. A martial artist's strange conditions were elusive. It had nothing to do with a martial artist's talent, only a martial artist's heart, consciousness, and other mysterious and profound things. Although Lin Ming's talent was ordinary, but concerning the heart of martial arts, he did not lose to any other talent in the history of Sky Fortune Kingdom. Since he was unable to enter that state again, Lin Ming continued to use the chilling water of the icy pond to temper his body, along with circulating his true essence. The efficacy of the soul-gathering pellet was also stimulated. Lin Ming's inner true essence gradually flowed from his muscles to the edges of his viscera. True essence covering viscera was the symbol of the boundary of the third stage of body transformation, viscera training. Lin Ming had accidentally half-stepped into the realm of the third stage of body transformation. The breakthrough was only a matter of time. A martial artist that practiced body transformation to the second stage of flesh training would have true essence moisten their muscles and perfuse the surface with it. In the third stage, viscera training, the true essence would cover the internal organs and protect them. Onwards to the fourth stage and fifth stage, the true essence would penetrate deeper and deeper into the body, until it would alter muscles and forge bones. Nevertheless, in practice, It was impossible to cover each and every inch of a martial artist's flesh and blood with true essence. Generally, a martial artist would pour true essence into their muscles. This sort of force-feeding mechanism was limited in its ways. A spot of muscle that absorbed too much true essence would arrive at a bottleneck. On the other hand, because of oversight, some muscle areas would not be moistened or exposed to true essence at all. Like this, it would leave behind an empty point in the body. But in actual combat, every empty point was also an exploitable weakness. Also, later in the future when one tried to reach the peak of body transformation, the pulse condensation period, these empty points would become a huge hindrance. But it was different in the icy pond. The icy pond stimulated each and every inch of the body's flesh. The cold chill entered through the pores and stimulated the whole body, muscle, blood, and even the marrow. To deal with this kind of cold, one had to revolve true essence and tremble the muscles to resist. This required that each tiny unit in the body would resist the cold too, and absorb true essence. Gradually, every inch of blood and flesh would be tempered by true essence, and thus remove the empty point. Realizing this, Lin Ming took a deep breath. It was no wonder why all these years the pulse condensation period martial artists of Sky Fortune Kingdom had almost all come from the Seven Profound Martial House. They had such mysterious and profound resources, in addition to outstanding talent and outstanding cultivation methods. To reach the breakthrough to the pulse condensation period was just far easier than it was for a normal martial artist. Not even mentioning the likes of Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and other top-tier talents, even if it was only a third-grade talent, as long as they spared no effort in supporting them with rare and precious medicines, they could also break through to the pulse condensation period. Before, if I had chosen to enter the first-level Sky Fortune Martial House, even if I had the chaotic virtues combat meridians, I still would not be able to train each and every inch of my flesh and blood. Just this icy pond has such miraculous effects. The other cultivation rooms must also have other mysterious effects. These 7 major killing arrays are just too precious. I must increase my rank as soon as possible so that I can freely enjoy the resources of the 7 major killing arrays. Chapter 72, Large Success of the Spirit Cure Symbol. Chapter 72, Large Success of the Spirit Cure Symbol. Chapter title is a spoiler, you can highlight it to read it now, or see it at the bottom. I have a question. What if this 7th level of difficulty is not suitable for my ranking? The Deacon Senior Apprentice gave a wry smile and said, "You ask that, but you do not need to stay inside. The icy pond has a chilly pervading cold. If you go in for a quarter hour you will be frozen stiff. Coming out to rest is also normal." Junior Apprentice Lin Yu went in and didn't come out. While it's impressive that you persisted inside, please be sure you do not damage the health of your body. Thank you Senior Apprentice brother for your advice. I truly did have some problems supporting myself inside. Lin Ming casually said in a perfunctory tone. No need to be polite. My name is Xie Dong. 2 years ago, I was also a disciple of the 7 Profound Martial House. I graduated, but afterwards I stayed at the 7 Profound Martial House to be a deacon. Junior Apprentice brother, you have such strength at such a young age, really you have boundless prospects in the future. Senior Apprentice, although I am considered somewhat stupid, have some accumulated experience and knowledge in cultivating. If later Junior Apprentice brother has any questions or unclear areas, feel free to ask me. Xiedong's cultivation had paused at the peak of bone forging. 4 pulse condensation period martial artists, as long as they were willing to devote their life in service to the Sky Fortune Kingdom, they would be given a title. Naturally, they would not remain here to be a deacon. Xiedong had already heard of Lin Ming's name, and now that he met him, he saw that this young man's strength was as the rumors said. Although Lin Ming's talent was reported to be ordinary, Xiedong believed that for Lin Ming to create such miracles at 15 years of age, he definitely would be able to do so again in the future. Thus this gave birth to a wish in his heart to become friends with Lin Ming. Thank you Senior Apprentice brother. Lin Ming courteously said a few words, and then excused himself and left. The day was getting late. After Lin Ming returned to his residence, he grabbed the spear, penetrating rainbow, and shot straight towards the martial arts room. He had to digest the day's harvests. The days at 7 Profound Marshall House were boring and fulfilling. Every morning, Lin Ming would wake up before sunrise and get out of his bed. He would sit in the courtyard by himself and breathe the pure air of the early morning. After he adjusted his body's condition and mind to an empty state, he would begin to cultivate strength training's flow like silk. After unifying with the body-tearing bone-shattering fist, Lin Ming would compare the martial skill to the memories in his mind. He discovered more and more of the marvelous of this true essence vibration. This was not solely an ingenious method to utilize strength. In a way it could be said to compare favorably with the sudden enlightenment state. If he was able to grasp this boundary, then his profit from it would be boundless. Lin Ming often sat like this for the entire morning. He would not eat or drink or even move a single half-step. In the evening, he would eat a bit and take a short rest, and then he would head to the icy pond waterfall to temper his body in the freezing waters. Lin Ming could only cultivate in the killing array for 24 hours a month. Each minute of these 24 hours was precious. For Lin Ming to save time, he only spent a half hour in the icy pond waterfall before he came out. But for Lin Ming, even a half hour as an enormous advantage. During the night, Lin Ming would start to practice his medicinal inscription symbol, because although Lin Ming had more options to cultivate and practice, the time that he had to practice his inscription symbol had reduced. However, because Lin Ming had achieved the perfect first layer of the true primal chaos formula, his rate of improvement hadn't slowed down by much. In the process of practicing the medicinal inscription symbol, Lin Ming also practiced the true primal chaos formula. The consumption of true essence stones was very quick. Every day he would have to consume at least one true essence stone. Lin Ming entered his 10th day at the 7 Profound Marshall House. Late at night, as stars flickered in the sky of the Dew Mountains, there was a deep silence. Lin Ming sat in a log cabin in the back mountains, his fingers moving as if they played a beautiful melody on a zither in the air. Each movement formed a colorful inscription symbol as they floated and overlaid each other. Within these last 10 days, after undergoing countless defeats time and time again, Lin Ming had finally lowered the error rate to 31%. With the increase in his true essence from the perfect first layer of the true primal chaos formula, Lin Ming was just barely able to support the time it took to draw up the medicinal inscription symbol. As each material was dragged flying into the air by Lin Ming's true essence, they were guided together under the influence of his soul force, where they formed dazzling lines and symbols. Lin Ming's forehead slowly became covered in beads of sweat, however, his expression gradually revealed an excited color. 4th level Vicious Beast's Blood, last inscription symbol, completed. I've finally completed it. In the moment Lin Ming withdrew his true essence, there was a flash. The several dozens of floating inscription symbols and lines beamed with light as they reflected off of each other in midair, and finally condensed into a sublime flame image. This was the lower spirit cure symbol. It was finally finished. Lin Ming took a piece of symbol paper and the medicinal symbol branded itself onto the symbol paper. For this little thing, Lin Ming had spent a tremendous amount of time and money. When all was complete, Lin Ming gratefully took that small slip of symbol paper and felt its energy fluctuations. He had an enormous feeling of complete satisfaction. How could he not be excited? As long as used this medicinal inscription symbol on either of those 2 top quality pills, their efficacy would be multiplied by several times. Those 2 pills were originally top-quality goods that had no market price. What kind of concept was it to increase its efficacy by several times? Perhaps now, even the 7 Profound Valleys would value it as precious. It had to be known that after a pill's efficacy doubled, that pill's value would increase by 10 times, or even several tens of times. This was because whenever a martial artist took a pill, their body would grow resistance. For instance, when Lin Ming had taken the golden deer pill, the first one he ate had the best effect. The second golden deer pill only had half the effect as the first one, and third only had half the effect of the second. Therefore, even if Lin Ming was wealthy, he had only bought 6 golden deer pills, 3 for himself and 3 for Lin Xiaodong. This was because once he had too many, the effects would be negligible and there might even be no effect. Even if he had eaten 10,000, The last 9,999 pills combined would be inferior to the first. The Golden Snake Scarlet Pill and the Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill were also like this. But if a pill's efficacy doubled, then its grade would also be increased and it would be the same as taking a higher grade pill. Its effects would increase over the original by several times. Understanding these truths, Lin Ming was naturally excited in his heart. But he did not immediately use this medicinal inscription symbol. Instead, he put it away, then took a good, deep bath. Afterwards he sat in meditation and breathed, adjusting the breathing of all the tiny units in his body, and adjusting his mental condition to its top form. Lin Ming was very clear on what would happen. If he ate this pill, he would surely undergo a breakthrough to the next stage, viscera training. This was a very major event, and if something went awry, his internal organs would suffer damage. But this Golden Snake Scarlet Pill's efficacy was increased several times. It had become a genuine, dangerously potent drug. Once something went wrong, his body would not be able to support the extreme effects of the pill, and his organs would burst and he would die. Therefore, before taking the pill, Lin Ming had to guarantee that his mind and body were at optimum condition, without even the tiniest flaw. Lin Ming practiced full breathing for half an hour, then took up a true essence stone and revolved the perfect first layer of the true primal chaos formula, letting his body's true essence slowly restore and return to peak condition. After all conditions had reached the peak of what they could be, Lin Ming pricked his ears to listen. After practicing the true primal chaos formula, Lin Ming's keen perception had risen by several fold. It was late at night now, and all was quiet. In a radius of 100 feet he could hear nothing but the call of insects. After determining that there was nobody lurking nearby, Lin Ming took the Golden Snake Scarlet Pill along with the lower spirit cure symbol. The Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill is far more formidable. If its efficacy increases by several times, I may not be able to withstand its effects. I will start with this Golden Snake Scarlet Pill. Chapter 72 Large Success of the Spirit Cure Symbol. Chapter 73 Viscera Training Time. Chapter 73 Viscera Training Time. Chapter title is a spoiler, highlight it to read it now or see it at the bottom. Lin Ming took a deep breath, and then crumbled the lower spirit cure symbol in his hands. At that time in the dark room, a beacon of light lit up as the flame symbol blazed to life. A wreath of flames wrapped around the Golden Snake Scarlet Pill, and this continued for several blinks of the eye, before it finally coalesced into beautiful lines of fire and formed a tiny flame brand on the golden red-colored pill. A brilliant flash of light lit up the entire room for a brief moment, and finally the room was restored to darkness. Done. Lin Ming slowly raised the pill and placed it into his mouth, then swallowed. With such a potent and dangerous pill like this, after eating it, it was impossible to be relaxed like when he had taken the Golden Deer pills. The effects of the drug would suddenly leap in his body, and attack him like a violent, fierce storm. This utterly painful process was what Lin Ming had psychologically prepared for. The pill was cool like a piece of ice as it easily slid down his throat and into his stomach. There it subsided quietly, without anything occurring. Lin Ming knew that this was only because the pill had not melted. He silently revolved the true primal chaos formula in his body. After a quarter hour, Lin Ming's body began to turn cold, and a chilly current converged in his blood and spread through his whole body along his bloodstream. His body felt as if it were lost in the icy pond waterfall of the 7 major killing arrays. The deep Arctic chill broke out in all directions of his body. Cold sweat dripped down from Lin Ming's forehead and flowed past his arms and shoulders. It was as if Lin Ming's body had become a leaking water bag. The golden scarlet snake was a cold-blooded animal. Its nature was that of the extreme cold elements, and the snake's gallbladder was where all this frosty cold air converged in its body. To cultivate with a pill made with this snake gallbladder was to feel an incomparably intense frosty chill. To suppress this wintry chill in his body, Lin Ming began to revolve the true primal chaos formula again. However, it was as if his true essence had been frozen, and his entire body was shivering with cold trembles, and the operation of his cultivation art slowed significantly. At the icy pond waterfall, Lin Ming had felt the numbing chill of the icy pond enter through his pores and permeate his body, But this golden snake scarlet pill was eaten directly. The cold energy melted in his insides and infused through even his marrow. If this was a normal golden snake scarlet pill, Lin Ming would have easily been able to resist this bone-penetrating chill with his thick and deep true essence. However, Lin Ming had used the lower spirit cure symbol to enhance the efficacy of this golden snake scarlet pill by several times. If another martial artist with this cultivation had eaten it, they would probably have already died from having their blood freeze. Facing such potent side effects, even with Lin Ming's amazingly strong will, he found it hard to resist. If true essence was like water that flowed through the pipe, this chilling cold was freezing that water. The circulation of true essence was blocked everywhere. Lin Ming's mind was clear on this. If he could not supply the flow of true essence to his entire body, then some parts of his body would freeze, and they would begin to necrotize and rot. Although Lin Ming was able to defend the majority of his body with true essence, if even a small part of his body necrotized from freezing, then it would be a waste of the efficacy of the pill. Not only that, but if with those injuries, even if he managed to prevent a permanently debilitating disability, he would also need to temper his body with true essence again and would waste a massive amount of time. Thinking this, Lin Ming clenched his teeth and forcefully stimulated his true essence to vibrate through his entire body. With the vibration of true essence throughout his entire body, he would break the chilling cold which had halted the flow of true essence in his body. Originally Lin Ming thought that his whole body would be in agonizing pain, and he would be in a situation where he would find it difficult to focus and concentrate his consciousness to cause all the tiny units in his body to achieve true essence resonance. However, Lin Ming didn't think that at this moment he would smoothly enter into that elusive state of strength training's flow like silk. This was because the frost chill had penetrated into his marrow, and all the countless tiny units in Lin Ming's body had to spontaneously resist this invasion of cold energy. Together, they shared hatred for a common enemy. In breaking down this pill, my body actually had this sort of change. Lin Ming was too busy to be joyful about this. He started to urge his true essence to break past the frost chill that had gathered in his body. At the same time, these tiny units in his body also independently began to absorb true essence and temper his body. This change wasn't only on the surface of his muscles, but also in his organs. True essence viscera training. Lin Ming had already touched the threshold of the third stage of body transformation, but after taking this golden snake scarlet pill, Lin Ming was finally able to take that final step and pass into and officially enter the third stage of body transformation. In the third stage of body training, true essence would temper the organs and protect them. One's fighting capacity would increase, and not only that, but a martial artist's internal organs would be moistened by true essence. The heart and lungs would be strong, and blood and vitality would be rich. Breaths would be long, and endurance would greatly increase. With the muscles under the irrigation of such rich blood, one's strength would also gradually increase. After the breakthrough into viscera training, true essence began to pass into his internal organs. Lin Ming felt the pressure on him plummet at the same time. The impedance of the cold energies on his true essence's circulation was also broken one at a time. The cold, chilling energies within his body were dispersed and absorbed by him to use to temper himself. At this point, Lin Ming had survived the cold air's attack on his body. The golden snake scarlet pill's efficacy had been perfectly absorbed. The only step left over was the consolidation process. After about 2 hours, Lin Ming opened both his eyes. He let out a long breath, but because this breath was too cold, as soon as it touched the outside air, it immediately turned the water humidity in the air into a white fog. This single breath of Lin Ming's had unexpectedly formed a straight, gassy arrow in the air that reached out 5 to 6 feet. Breathing in was like a serpent, breathing out was like an arrow. This was exactly the sign of viscera training. However, not all viscera training martial artists could achieve this step. Some martial artists' viscera training was not thorough or complete, and their true essence only covered a small part of their body's internal organs, or might even just be on their surface, and not throughout. With martial artists like these, even though they were also at the viscera training stage, their strength was far weaker than those whose viscera training was complete. Strength training, flesh training, viscera training, altering muscle, bone forging, pulse condensation. These 6 stages were all the basis for the foundation for every step ahead of them, and had to be done step by step in an orderly fashion. Drawing an analogy, if a martial artist's flesh training was not thorough and complete, and then the true essence on the surface of their muscles would be limited. This limited true essence would be a major weakness and flaw that would cause even more problems down the road in viscera training. As a result, with each mistake on each step, it would be worse and worse, and finally it would be impossible to step into the pulse condensation period. This was the fundamental reason that the majority of martial artists in the Sky Fortune Kingdom were unable to achieve the pulse condensation period for their entire lives. Therefore, with the Sky Fortune Kingdom's martial artists, even if they were at the same stage, there would be massive disparities between their individual strengths. To the disciples of the 7 Profound Martial House, jumping past these challenges was not an unusual occurrence. If instead you couldn't do that, then that was simply just too disappointing. For 7 days after reaching the 3rd stage of body transformation, Lin Ming didn't go anywhere. He stayed in his dwelling to digest the remaining effects of the Golden Snake Scarlet Pill, and to consolidate his cultivation. During this time, Lin Ming had completely and cleanly consumed all the rest of his 10 true essence stones. Seeing these true essence stones that had completely lost their luster, Lin Ming forced a smile and shook his head. These things, he feared he would need hundreds, if not thousands, and even that might not be enough. If he wished to reach the higher levels of martial arts faster, then these true essence stones were essential. But if he wanted to exchange for more true essence stones, then he would need unbelievably massive sums of gold. It was most probably a futile attempt to get that much gold by selling overwhelming rune inscriptions. The date of the match with Zhong Kang is getting closer and closer. I wonder how much my strength has increased. How high can I reach on the ranking stone? Lin Ming was faintly anticipating the next ranking war at the 10,000 killing array assessment. He didn't have an opponent now to test his strength, so he could only go to the strength measuring room. Chapter 73, Viscera Training Time. Chapter 74, Steady Spear at the Waterfall. Chapter 74, Steady Spear at the Waterfall. When Lin Ming arrived at the strength measuring room, it was the afternoon, and there were only 4 or 5 people inside testing their might. Lin Ming walked over to an obscure corner, took aim at the stone column, and freely let loose a punch. Peng! The stone pillar began to fiercely rock as the light beam jumped up and down crazily. Finally it stabilized at almost 4 feet. 3,900 jins. It was only a casual punch, and yet it had this result. With this result, Lin Ming was quite satisfied. Initially, during the strength trial at the entrance examination, the Heavenly Abode's elder senior apprentice Ling Sen had come to demonstrate for them. He had also casually punched the stone column which had a 4,900 jin result. Lin Ming remembered this moment crystal clear, thus this time he intentionally had also casually punched the stone column to see how vast the gap between him and Ling Sen was still. Lin Sen is at the peak of the 4th stage of body transformation, and is a half step to reaching the bone forging stage. I am just at the early 3rd stage of body transformation, but the difference is only 1,000 jins. After I achieve the 4th stage of body transformation, my strength will definitely surpass his. But, a martial artist cannot just look at strength only. Strength is my strong point, but I can't let the other aspects fall behind. With that in mind, Lin Ming took a deep breath and wholly relaxed his body. He stood there with his eyes shut for a moment, and subtly adjusted his breathing. The tiny units of his body gradually became consistent in their breathing rhythm, and had achieved a slight resonance frequency. Then, Lin Ming jerked his eyes open, sent his strength rolling up from his thighs to his waist, and instantly erupted forwards from his static condition. Bang! The fist pounded the strength-measuring stone column like a malicious steel weight. And the vibration did not end. The light beam first shot up to 4,200 jins, then oscillated up and down between 4,200 jins and 4,300 jins, back and forth. When a normal martial artist measured his strength on the stone column, the light beam would flash several times, rise high and then fall. But Lin Ming's fist actually caused the light beam to fly up and down between 4,200 jins and 4,300 jins for over 20 breaths of time. This was true essence vibration, the effect which was achieved by cultivating strength training's flow like silk. My fist strength is between 4200 jins and 4300 jins. But using this flow like silk, I can actually send my fist strength into my opponent's body and attack his vital organs. Also, it continually attacks. A martial artist who didn't completely undergo viscera training would just die. Even a martial artist at the large success of viscera training, or even a powerhouse of the altering muscle stage, would be severely wounded and spit blood after receiving my fists. The Chaotic Virtues Combat Meridians had recorded that the flow like silk stage was both a marvelous and purely terrifying destructive power. What a fearsome cultivation method! But the nameless senior who left behind the body-tearing bone-shattering fist only managed to achieve the formidable destructive power, and didn't find out how to resonate all the tiny units in the body. Like that, it would be useless for cultivation. It really was incomplete. It was the 21st day since Lin Ming had arrived at the Seven Profound Martial House. In the early morning, Lin Ming carried his long spear, penetrating rainbow, to the icy pond waterfall of the 7 major killing arrays. The deacon who was responsible for managing and protecting the array, Xie Dong, saw Lin Ming arrive and greeted him with a smile. "Junior apprentice brother, you are here quite early. You are truly diligent." "Good morning, senior apprentice brother," Lin Ming politely greeted. Lin Ming preferred to come to the icy pond waterfall in the mornings and evenings, because during these times there were fewer people who reserved an appointment, and he could usually make an appointment during this time whenever he wanted. After a quarter hour the array will open again. This junior apprentice brother will be at the 3rd position, 7th level of difficulty. Xie Dong said. So, I want to adjust the difficulty today to the 8th level. This was the first time Lin Ming had come to the icy pond waterfall after reaching the 3rd stage of body transformation. The truth was, at the 7th level, Lin Ming could dive deep to reach an area that was cold enough. However, this time Lin Ming carried the penetrating rainbow with him. The penetrating rainbow was 820 jins. If he dived too deep, it would be difficult to swim back up. 8th level of difficulty? Xie Dong said with surprise. The 8th level of difficulty corresponded to between rank 80 and rank 110. Lin Ming even wanted to challenge this difficulty. Xie Dong wanted to urge Lin Ming not to advance so recklessly, but at this moment he noted differences in Lin Ming's true essence fluctuations. "Junior apprentice brother, you broke through?" Xie Dong certainly remembered that the last time Lin Ming had come here, he was only at the peak 2nd stage of body transformation. He didn't think that he would reach the 3rd stage of body transformation so quickly. "Millimeter. I just broke through recently. Haha, congratulations. But junior apprentice brother, you just broke through. Strength growth is actually a very slow and steady process and takes time to accumulate. Are you sure that you want to enter the 8th level of difficulty?" I've already decided. I won't change my mind. All right. Xie Dong shrugged and complied with Lin Ming's request. After a quarter hour, Lin Ming carried the penetrating rainbow and moved towards the icy pond waterfall. Xie Dong looked and discovered that Lin Ming's footsteps were very heavy. Every time Lin Ming stepped on the mountain valley's grass, it would leave a deep impression in the ground. Xie Dong's eyes narrowed in suspicion. His vision focused on the long box that Lin Ming was carrying. Such a long box is probably a spear or a halberd or something like that. For each step to make such a deep impression in the ground, that must be a very heavy weapon, at least 700 or 800 jins. For this junior apprentice brother Lin to choose such a heavy spear or halberd as his choice of weapon, how rare. As Lin Ming entered the array, he placed the penetrating rainbow on his back and jumped into the icy pond. The 8th level of difficulty icy pond's chilliness was really turned a notch, but with Lin Ming's new breakthrough, this cold was just about right for him. Before, when he had dived into the icy pond, when he was submerged in the water, he could feel that the icy pond had a formidable resistance similar to mercury. But now, shouldering the 820 jin heavy long spear on his back, Lin Ming actually plummeted straight down. Fiercely revolving his true essence, Lin Ming slowed down in the water. He kicked his legs together and with the penetrating rainbow long spear on his back, he arrived at a rock protrusion near the surface of the icy pond. Leveraging the rock, he sprung upwards. Lin Ming jumped onto a second rock protrusion and continued this several times until he arrived under the waterfall. The icy pond waterfall not only had the icy pond, but it also had a waterfall. The waterfall was equally incomparably cold, and not only that, but there was a current of water that crashed downwards from a height of 300 feet. That force's strength was no less than 1,000 jins. Under this waterfall was a giant rock that was immersed in the water. It was for martial artists who wished to cultivate under the waterfall. This giant rock was specially left there by the master who had created this icy pond waterfall, otherwise how could there be such a rock underneath that raging waterfall? It would have already been worn down and broken into pieces by the years of endless impact. What a tremendous crushing force! Lin Ming tried to stand up atop the rock, but discovered that it was very difficult to steady himself. Although Lin Ming had taken his time to find a small place that wasn't too affected by the waterfall, the icy pond waterfall water here was especially heavy, and the flushing of it underneath his legs and over his body caused him to not be able to stand up straight. Lin Ming directly thrusted his spear into the rock. He gripped onto the penetrating rainbow spear shaft and came to a stop. 1,000 jins of water impacted down on Lin Ming's upper back and shoulders. The pain felt as if iron hammers were continuously pounding on his back, and it was as if his body was being torn apart. Moreover, this waterfall was also incomparably cold, and because of the rate of water flow over him, the heat of his body dispersed even quicker. Even as Lin Ming revolved the true primal chaos formula, he could feel the chilling cold unceasingly penetrate even into his marrow, as if he was being stabbed with countless, painful needles. Lin Ming grasped the long spear and adjusted all the breathing of the tiny units in his body. He adjusted his body to touch the flow like silk boundary, and then used this vibration of true essence to barely stand firm. With each breath he took, Lin Ming's inner true essence circulation started to become peaceful, and he found himself more and more stable, until he could finally stand up straight. Lin Ming withdrew the penetrating rainbow from the rock. He did not sweep out with his spear, or thrust with his spear, or make any movement with his spear. Instead, he simply stood there with his spear in hand. The spear was the king of 100 soldiers. It could sweep, cut down, dance like a flower, thrust straight. Although these spear moves seemed simple, but to practice to the large success stage was not easy at all. Spears were difficult to learn, and even harder to master. A spear was a long weapon. An inch longer, and inch stronger, the spear followed this rule. Spearplay's large success involved the coordination of true essence and martial skill to display its truly terrifying striking power and killing scope. Therefore all the generals that fought on a battlefield used the spear or a halberd. A sword could only be used by the military strategist. But in reverse, an inch shorter would be an inch weaker. Although swords and sabers were inferior to a spear's striking power and their killing range was smaller, they won in accuracy. And more so a dagger. That was why many assassins used daggers. This advantage was easy to hide. A dagger was fast, accurate and easy to fatally strike an opponent. That was why it was unheard of for an assassin to carry around such an obvious weapon like a spear. That's why to practice a spear, the first goal was accuracy. Lin Ming had been deboning for years. Regardless of whether it was a saber or a spear, he was already very accurate. In the 10,000 killing array, he had the accuracy to cut the spider's silk as it rapidly flew at him. However, this was in a situation where there was no resistance at all. In actual combat and facing an enemy's martial skills, the energy flow of true essence would be wreaking havoc everywhere. To use a spear to break that energy flow and thrust towards the enemy's weak point was not easy. Therefore, the first step of practicing a spear was neither the spear skills nor the spear moves, but to keep the spear steady at all times. At this time, Lin Ming gripped the penetrating rainbow with both hands. His hands were wrapped around the latter half section, and 70% of the shaft was soaked in the crushing force of the waterfall, as it resisted the unending 1,000 jins impact. Penetrating rainbow was originally 820 jins. The spear shaft was 8 feet in length, and the spearhead was 8 inches. With such a long spear, in addition to its weight, to maintain steadiness underneath the maddening force of a 300-foot waterfall drop, was easier said than done. Even with Lin Ming's arm strength of 4,200 jins, the end of the spearhead was wobbling up and down, as if confused. It's really heavy. Lin Ming gritted his teeth. He stayed like this a while, until he began to feel his arms go numb, and the spear tip was starting to be pressed downwards by the force of the waterfall. Chapter 75 Day of the Gambling Match. Chapter 75 Day of the Gambling Match. Lin Ming was simultaneously controlling his arm strength and also revolving his true essence to resist the bone-chilling cold of the waterfall. Even if he had the true primal chaos formula supporting him, it was not something he could support. His arms began to shiver and blue veins started to clearly stick on out his forearms. After half an incense stick of time, there was a dull thumping sound as penetrating Rainbow's spear point struck the rock. It was finally pushed down by the endless waterfall. Lin Ming half knelt on the rock, gasping for breath in big gulps. He felt as if both of his lifeless arms weren't his anymore. He tried to stand, but found that the true essence in his body had been mostly consumed. Splash! The waterfall was rushing down the rock and swept him off. He raised his spear and stabbed the rock, steadying his body in the water. About a quarter hour. It seems that's my limit. What a pity. If I had true essence stones I would be good. I could quickly restore my true essence and continue practice. My gambling match with Zhong Kang is approaching. Even if I win his true essence stones, I can only use them for a while until they're gone. Afterwards I have to try to find a solution to this. Time passed day by day. Lin Ming practiced his spear for 2 hours every day in the icy pond waterfall. While practicing the spear, he also tempered his body at the same time. The efficacy of the golden snake scarlet pill had been completely absorbed by him at last. Although Lin Ming's cultivation had paused at the early third stage of body transformation, he had thoroughly consolidated this stage. After 8 days passed, Lin Ming had used up all 16 hours of practice time that he had saved up. On the last day, Lin Ming was already able to carry the penetrating rainbow and stand under the waterfall with one breath for 1 hour. From the beginning, his long spear would be nearly motionless, but only half an hour later would there be a small vibration. After 2 days passed. It was exactly 1 month since Lin Ming had arrived at the Seven Profound Martial House. Lin Ming rose from bed early like he usually did. He stood before the wooden door of his residence under the canopy shade of the century-old trees. He grasped the spear, penetrating rainbow, in his hand and stretched out both hands in front of himself while holding it. Like this, he held 820 jins completely and evenly perpendicular to his body. At the spear point of penetrating rainbow, he had placed a small porcelain bowl. This bowl was filled to the brim with water. Under Lin Ming's deep and steady strength, this bowl of water hadn't even lost the tiniest amount of water. It was as if it were placed on a flat tabletop. Since he had exhausted the remaining hours he could use the 7 major killing arrays for, and could not go to the icy pond waterfall, Lin Ming had practiced with these self-created methods. Lin Ming practiced until it was almost noon. He ate a very simple meal and took a small rest, then he carried penetrating rainbow and went straight to the Seven Profound Martial House's martial stage. Today was the day he had his gambling match with Zhong Kang. Although it was already the fall season, the high noon sun was blazing intensely hot. This was the time of day at which yang energy was thickest in the air. The most sinister baking sunlight was at 3/4 to noon. The average person would usually opt to not go out at this time, and instead stay at home and take a nap. However, right now at the Seven Profound Martial House's martial stage was actually gathered a large crowd of people. Most of these people were disciples from the Seven Profound Martial House's Earth Hall and Human Hall. There were also some disciples of the heavenly abode that had arrived. Although at this time the sunlight was smolderingly hot, these people's faces didn't have the slightest hint of sweat. It was as if the skies were clear and they were leisurely looking around with an unflustered appearance. Obviously none of these disciples were mediocre. Today was the day that the 4 people, Lin Ming, Zhong Kang, Wang Yangfeng, and Liu Mingxiang, had their gambling match. In this group of 4, 2 of them were the first and second place of the new disciples that had taken the entrance exam, and the other 2 were strong old disciples. This stunt was enough to arouse the attention and interest of many disciples in the 7 profound martial house. The disciples of the human hall had come to take a look at the liveliness and have some fun, but the disciples of the earth hall and heavenly abode had come to take a look at their future rivals. Whether it was Lin Ming or Wang Yangfeng, their later rankings would certainly rise. Even a disciple of the heavenly abode would not look down upon them. Of course, that was a matter for later. Right now, their strength was still in its infancy. There isn't much suspense in the outcome of these matches. In the past battles that the new disciples participated in, the newbies almost never won against the old disciples, much less this time. They are up against Liu Mingxiang and Zhong Kang, who are both experts. Lin Ming and Wang Yangfeng really do not have any hope at all. A disciple of the heavenly abode slowly said as he looked at the sundial near the martial stage. Indeed. But don't underestimate this Lin Ming. When he first entered the martial house, I didn't care about him at all, but in the last 10,000 killing array assessment he was able to reach rank 126. This is an extraordinary result. This time he is up against Zhong Kang. If he were matched against Liu Mingxiang, then that Liu Mingxiang would not do well and might possibly fail miserably. You think that Liu Mingxiang would lose to Lin Ming? Come on, Lin Ming's talent is limited. Although he managed to get a high ranking in the 10,000 killing array, he is still far from Liu Mingxiang. He may have taken the 2 top quality pills that were rewarded from the entrance examination and absorbed some of the effects, but do you think that in a month he would be able to overtake Liu Mingxiang? Talent. You are only staring at Lin Ming's talent. No matter what sort of fortuitous encounter Lin Ming had, or what sort of precious pills or herbs or medicines he had, the strife that he was able to manifest so far has completely disregarded his talent. Those who look down on him just because of his talent will suffer a loss. A disciple of the heavenly abode firmly said. Hehe, you sure think highly of that Lin Ming. Last time I went to the depository, I specifically paid attention to the cultivation method that Lin Ming chose. The Earth Hall disciples deliberately dragged out his tone as he saw how much attention he had attracted. This Lin Ming chose the cultivation methods for foundation spear technique and foundation movement technique. He also had some incomplete body-tearing bone-shattering fist martial skill that he picked up. With just these, how much progress could he have with just 1 month? Before this, he was able to obtain rank 126 because he took the rare and precious Crimson Gold Dragon Marrow Pill and Golden Snake Scarlet Pill at the same time. Even a pig would find its cultivation increased. This Lin Ming's talent is limited. He cannot practice higher-grade cultivation methods and martial skills. Depending on these 2 foundation manuals, on what basis would he be able to surpass Liu Mingxiang? Lin Ming had raised a ruckus at the 10,000 killing array, so it was very easy for him to arouse the interest of the other martial house disciples. Many people had taken a look at the cultivation method that Lin Ming had selected. This matter was very easy. His name was the only one on the jade slip note, and those who wanted to see could see it. What? Foundation spear technique and foundation movement technique? Lin Ming chose those 2? How could that sort of cultivation method have any sort of formidable might? I thought for sure that he would choose something like the shadowless art or the absolute 9 yang and so on. Ha, shadowless art? Absolute 9 yang? Those cultivation methods are certainly good, but do you think an average person can cultivate them? Have you forgotten Lin Ming's talent? I think that fellow's perception is also limited. All he knows is his own self-knowledge, therefore he chose these 2 sets of simple skills to learn. Wait and see, this Lin Ming's rising halo will be put down. The disciple's tone and smirking expression indicated that he took pleasure in Lin Ming's misfortune. Lin Ming had only been at the 7 profound martial house for a short time, and yet his ranking was already ahead of this man. This really made him feel sick in his heart. At this time, there was a commotion in the ground. A distant group of people parted to make way. 2 men, both about 20 years old, walked up side by side. One of the 2 was a gaunt and pale-looking man. His facial expression was cold and resolute. A black, heavy sword was strapped to his back. Although he was just walking, his entire manner seemed as if it were a razor. He was like a cold treasure sword that had been drawn out. It really gave those around him a huge feeling of pressure as he walked past them. The other man was robust and tall, with a vigorous expression. His whole body was thickly corded with muscles, and he carried an 8-foot-long dark purple staff on his back. Each step this person took was steady and silent. If each footprint was measured, it would be discovered that the spacing between every 2 steps was completely consistent. It was 6 feet every time, no more and no less. This was the result from cultivating the top movement technique from the 7 profound Marshall House's depositories, the 6-foot step. Ling Sen. Ta Ku. These 2 people also came to watch the match. Among those who came to watch the gambling match, most were disciples of the Earth Hall. Disciples of the heavenly abode had come, but most of them were around rank 50 and 60. This was around the very end of the heavenly abode rankings. They had come out of fear that they would be pushed out by those in the match today, so they came to take a look at the situation. But Ling Sen and Ta Ku were the top 2 unshakable existences on the ranking stone. They also came to see an internal gambling match of the Earth Hall. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,